It all started with the roses dying. Only the one bush at first. The old man had come out to water his garden the same way he did every morning. It was looking sad and brown, leaves drooping and branches hardening. Just the one bush in the corner. But the next day, the bushes on either side of it had died too. Within a week, it was that whole corner of the garden. As the old man puts on his gardening gloves at the sink and stares out of the kitchen window, he knows that something is seriously wrong with his poor plants. The flourishing garden, so neatly maintained throughout all of his retirement years, his pride and joy, is now steadily dying before his very eyes. Living in a small one-story house, there isn't much left for him to do. Out in Bushy, right on the edge of what could be considered London, there is very little going on with his day. Inside the house, he hangs all of his photos of the Lancaster bomber that he and his squad flew in the Second World War. Although those days are long behind him now, he chose to live here because on the hill that his house is on, he can see the planes taking off and landing from the nearby RAF base. And where does he like to sit and watch the planes? From his immaculate garden. The old man scowls at it. The perfectly trimmed hedges, blossoming trees, uniform grass, and colorful beds are all being ruined by a dark stain steadily spreading from the back right corner. Starting with that rose bush in the corner and spreading out, everything in a rough circle measuring close to 15 feet is withering away and dying. Not on his watch. The kettle finishes boiling. He has to use his old gas hobs to heat up the water. The cooker is apparently long past its lifespan. The ignition stopped working years ago, so he has to use matches to start it. If he leaves on the gas by accident, well, there wouldn't be much of a kitchen left. He pours the water out into a mug and starts brewing his morning cup of tea. A few minutes later, the back door slides open and the old man emerges, trowel and cup of tea in hand. Years ago, he would have marched purposefully across the grass, but now he is forced to plod instead. His knees and back are both starting to give out from the years of tending to his precious green friends, but the fire is still in his belly. He reaches the edge of the dead patch and looks down. The lawn isn't just yellowing, it's fully brown. He pokes at the grass with his shoe, and it breaks apart to the touch. How strange. He's never seen anything die off so suddenly and uniformly. It isn't just a bad bed or an infection spreading around. It's a clear patch of death where nothing in the given area stands a chance. He steps onto the brown grass and walks to the corner where that first rosebush died. The base of the fence is rotting away in that corner, giving him a peek into his neighbor's garden. With a good deal of groaning and aching, the old man lowers himself onto his hands and knees and peers under the fence. A pair of eyes meet his. The old man yells out in surprise. The person on the other end screams. After a moment, they look under again and start laughing. It's just the mom from next door. She has kids who like to play in the garden on their trampoline while he's working. They'll often talk over the fence to him between bounces. "I hope I didn't give you a heart attack," she teases. He reassures her that he's made of sterner stuff than that. Then they got to the matter at hand. What is going on in their gardens? She's having the same issue too. That same circle is spreading out over her side too. Everything it touches is dying. "Well then, has to be coming from this corner," the old man says. A pair of them pull the fence apart around the corner, creating a little hole between their gardens. It's short work. The boards break apart at the lightest touch. Before long, they have a little work site ready. There must be something down in this corner that's causing all of this. Side by side, the old man and the mom from next door start to dig. The soil feels strange to dig through. There's a kind of stickiness to it, as if there's a very faint layer of slime binding it together. Could it be a dead animal? That's the old man's best guess right now, but it doesn't seem very convincing. Surely that would nourish the soil with more nutrients. It might offset the pH balance a bit, but not to the extent of... Crack! The mom's trowel breaks. She holds it up to her face, confused. The metal shovel scoop has broken. The tip of it has fallen off, half snapped, half melted. "I just bought this the other day." But the old man isn't looking at the trowel anymore. Instead, he's staring into the hole that the pair of them have dug. Down there at the bottom, underneath the piece of broken metal, something is moving. He plants a gloved hand on either side of the hole and leans down over it, peering at whatever it is. Worms. Tiny brown worms, each writhing and wrapping around the others, tying and untying knots. He straightens up with a groan, takes his gloves off, and pushes himself to his feet. "We need to call the council. There's something dead down there that's rotten badly." The woman from Hertzmere Council was clearly not very interested in sending a waste disposal team down when the old man called her. She told him they would stop by the bungalow in 3 to 5 working days and hung up. Several calls later, she relented and agreed they would send a team across that afternoon. Soon after 4 p.m., a knock comes at the door. The old man escorts the waste disposal team around the side entrance, keen for them not to traipse any mud through the house. Clearly annoyed by this, the 2 workmen for the council trudge around the side and out into the garden, grumbling about how they have more important things to be getting on with. The old man chooses to ignore them, leading them to the back corner of his garden and pointing down into the hole he and his neighbor had dug just that morning. Only, the hole is empty. "What are we looking at here?" one of the workmen grunts. It's a good question. There's nothing at the bottom of the hole, no writhing worms, not even the shard of the trowel. It's just an empty hole. The old man kneels back down by the hole and scoops back the dirt a bit with his own trowel. Nothing. The old man hears words muttered that he hasn't heard since the war as he escorts the 2 gentlemen back to their van. They slam the doors more heavily than necessary and drive off down the quiet suburban street, leaving the man standing confused on his doorstep. The next day, when he goes out to garden, the circle of death hasn't grown. It still looks bad. The plants inside it are clearly dead, but it hasn't spread any further than it was the previous day. The old man sips his tea over the sink and stares out at the garden. It must have been next door. That would be it. Before the council had shown up yesterday, the mom must have come outside and bagged up whatever dead thing was back there and thrown it out herself. Good. He just hopes it doesn't stink up the bin. Now to do the sad part of the task and clear away all of his dead plants. Those rose bushes had been planted the year he moved in. His wife had planted them. As he dons his gloves, the old man feels a wave of sadness wash over. But before he can experience it too deeply, he notices the holes. The tips of his gloves are gone, his fingers poking clean out. In fact, looking down at his trousers, he notices a pair of holes on the knees of them from where he'd been kneeling in the dirt yesterday. A knock at the front door makes him jump. He goes out to see the mom from next door standing anxiously outside his place. She's glancing up and down the street as she talks. She asks if he's seen either of her boys. He shakes his head, hasn't seen them all day. He reassures her it's probably nothing. Back in his day, boys used to go out of the house first thing in the morning and be back for dinner. Parents these days are too sensitive, too anxious. The look on her face tells him that he isn't helping. She mutters something about having seen someone suspicious walking down the street, someone strange. No use worrying about it for now. She heads off in the direction of the local park to go and look for her sons. The old man calls out to her as she leaves, thanking her for sorting out the dead animal from the end of the garden. She looks back at him confused. She hadn't touched it. All the rest of the day, the old man stands by his curtains, twitching them open every now and then to peer out and see if the boys are anywhere to be seen. He's locked all of his doors and left the keys under his pillow, but sunset comes and goes. Nighttime creeps over the suburbs. No children in sight. He's just about to go to bed when he spots someone in the corner of the street. Just outside the glow from the streetlights, the figure lurks over by the street sign. The person moves strangely, taking shaky footsteps and seeming to move slightly aimlessly around the pavement, avoiding the light. He opens the curtain wider and peers outside. His eyes definitely aren't what they used to be. He can't really make out who the person is at all. The safe thing to do is stay inside. A man of his age should make sure not to get involved. But the photo of him standing by his Lancaster on the wall tells him something different. The old man straightens up as best he can and walks over to the front door. He doesn't take a weapon with him. He won't need one. He will go over and talk to this gentleman, ask him what he's doing hanging around this neighborhood at night, and if things go poorly, he'll walk back inside and promptly call the police. The thrill of the confrontation excites him a little. He's missed this. As the cold night air blows against his face, he feels his youthful energy returning to him once again. He calls out to the man on the corner. The shadowy figure stops pacing and slowly turns around to get a better look at him. The old man can tell even from this distance that the gentleman on the street is a good deal taller than him, but that shouldn't matter much. He'll go over, have some stern words, and that'll be that. If this strange man knows anything, it'll be that he should respect his elders. The old man crosses the road and stands under the streetlight, just a few feet away from the man. Frustratingly, his eyes still can't quite make out the man's face. The old man clears his throat and rolls up his sleeves.
Sir, this is a residential neighborhood with young children and an excellent relationship with local law enforcement. I would advise you to move along, or we'll be forced to call the authorities.
But the sound that greets the old man is enough to immediately do away with any of his bravado. His blood runs cold as the figure in front of him starts to laugh. It is a gruff, rasping noise with a slight squelching underneath it. Come to think of it, every little movement this figure makes, there's a little squelch. The laugh stops suddenly, sharply. The figure turns the rest of the way around to face the old man head-on. It takes a step forward. Light falls across it, revealing a mass of wriggling, convulsing worms. Millions of small brown worms all weaving in and out of one another, dripping a thick and sticky liquid onto the street. The creature has no face, no features, no skin, nothing. It has the shape of a man, but that is where the resemblance ends. It is utterly inhuman, utterly terrifying. The old man almost topples backward in surprise, but steadies himself. A fall at his age would be very bad news indeed. The creature reaches out a writhing arm toward him. Liquid drips from it onto the sidewalk. A small puff of gas comes up from it as the liquid bubbles, burning a little dent into the stone. So that's what was killing his roses. Fast as he can, the old man turns and hurries back to his house. He doesn't want to turn around for risk of losing his balance. He'll get inside, lock the door, and call the police. They will know precisely what to do. That squelching sound is behind him, taking shaky, inhuman steps to follow him. The old man reaches the front door and slams it shut. He grabs the landline in the hallway and immediately dials 999, the British emergency number.
Hello? Police, please. There's a gentleman loitering outside my domicile. He appears to be made of worms. Worms, yes. No medication. Just myself.
There's a thud at the door, then a second thud. The old man drops the receiver and takes a few steps back. No more thuds. No more noises. Maybe that was a slight overreaction. The old man straightens up and clears his throat. Nothing to worry about. A sizzling sound fills the hallway. The door starts to look strange. 2 patches are appearing on it, the paint cracking and discoloring. The patches start to bulge outwards, and a drop of liquid seeps through. It falls on the welcome mat and burns a hole clean through it. The old man's eyes widen. Worms. Just 2 or 3 at first, then a few more, then a dozen more, burrow their way through the door, each dripping with that foul liquid. The holes grow larger and larger until the creature has 2 large armholes burnt clear through the wood. The creature grips what remains of the door with its wormed fingers and wrenches the wood apart. It towers over the old man as it stands in the doorway, its surface crawling and wriggling as its feet burn holes into the carpet. The book hits the creature square in the chest, knocking it off balance. The old man throws another book and another. He knew it was a good idea to keep his bookshelf out in the hallway. He grabs another, but hesitates and puts it back, not the first editions. Instead, he heaves the old yellow pages in both of his hands and launches it as hard as he can at the worm monster. The book smacks into its chest with enough force to break a chunk of it apart. The creature's chest bursts open, sending worms flying through the air. Something red falls out onto the carpet. A baseball cap. A child's baseball cap, half digested. The old man gasps and puts a hand to his mouth. The worms splattered against the wall start to slide down towards the carpet, eating through the wallpaper as they go. Once on the ground, they start to crawl and wriggle back over to their body, reabsorbing into the mass from the feet. The creature straightens up like nothing ever happened. He's going to need more than books. Hello? It's the mom from next door. The old man's eyes widen further. I saw your door was still open. I was just wondering if you've seen... The mom appears in the front doorway just behind the monster, takes one look up at it, and freezes. She has a rusty old Zippo with a dim flame to light her way. The wormed mass turns round to her. In the same rasping voice that it laughed with earlier, it says one word. Her name. Then it notices something and flinches slightly, the lighter in her hand. For a second, the old man, the mom from next door, and the giant worm monster all look at the tiny little flame. Then it goes out. The creature lunges at her, grabbing her by the shoulders and wrenching her into a ferocious hug. The smell of dissolving flesh fills the hallway as she screams in agony. The old man does everything he can not to throw up. He needs to get out of the house. The back door. He'll go out the back while the creature eats. Step by step, he creeps away from the distracted monstrosity next to his coat rack, trying his best not to be heard. He slides the kitchen door closed and puts a chair against the handle. It's not much, but it'll buy him a few seconds. He turns, rushing to the glass sliding doors at the back of the house, and reaches for the key on the side. Only, it's gone. Of course, he left all the keys under his pillow. The pillow in the bedroom that's right next to... His shoulders slump. He turns back around and sees a crack of light under the kitchen door. A couple of worms are crawling their way under it, gathering together and starting to form on the tiles. That's it then. It's all over. Nothing left for it. The old man lets his eyes wander around the room. That creature is making its way into this kitchen no matter what he does. All he has are a few precious seconds until those worms are big enough to come after him. He wants to spend those seconds the right way. Feeling his ragged breathing starting to find a steadier rhythm, he walks over to that old picture on the wall. Him and his crew, all his best friends, standing young and proud in front of their bomber. He'd experienced this feeling before this moment. When you know that your demise is guaranteed, it removes some of the panic, the uncertainty of, will I make it? What can I do? Do I have a chance? It's a sickly thing. It leaves you in the lurch, trying desperately to battle against your own nerves. Once it's decided, however, well, then everything becomes a lot clearer. He'd felt this way in the war, when their bomber was shot at while flying over occupied France. They were steadily losing altitude and airspeed as they crossed back over the channel. The 7 of them had each taken a quiet moment to say their prayers and look out at the stars flitting above them. Only, they hadn't died. In fact, they were all being incredibly foolish. The solution was so simple that when the old man's rear gunner suggested they just drop all their remaining bombs onto the water to save weight, the group of them had all burst out laughing. One by one, the bombs dropped silently into the sea. They're probably still down there to this day. No explosions. Explosions. The old man smiles. Maybe it's not quite over after all. He looks back at the ball of worms assembling on his kitchen floor. As more worms crawl under the door and join the mass, it takes on different strange shapes. First a mouse, then a rabbit, a cat, dog. In a moment, it'll be the size of a hog. Rushing over to his gas stovetop, he twists all 4 of the dials all the way up. They whine and hiss at him, spewing acrid-smelling gas into the air. Already his head starts to swim. He'll have to time this just right. He snatches the trowel and a box of matches up off the countertop and goes to the sliding glass door. This is it. Rasping laughter fills the room as the creature stands to its full height, head almost brushing against the ceiling. The old man can feel himself losing consciousness from all the gas in the room. Bang! He slams the trowel against the glass door. Nothing. Bang! He does it again, still hopeless. The laughter grows louder as he hears squelching footsteps behind him. Bang! This time there's a slight chip. He hits it again and again, trying his best to shatter it, but while the little chip grows into a crack, it's not working. A warm, squishy mass smothers his shoulder. Worms burrow into his flesh, searing white-hot pain throughout his body. That'll have to do. The old man strikes the match. Boom! Glass shatters, flames bloom out of the house, licking the last remaining healthy flowers. Burning worms fly in all different directions, scattered across the lawn, the back fence, and beyond. The old man thuds onto his back, looking up at the billowing smoke making its way up towards the stars, as the scared worms burrow their way back into the ground. He would never understand the monster that attacked him that night. Thankfully, this is where I come in. There is something about fire that unlocks this primal fear in almost all living creatures, and SCP-906 is no different. Nicknamed the Scouring Hive, SCP-906 is the blanket designation for a supercolony of worm-like invertebrates that appear to share a semi-advanced hive mind. The individual worms are dark brown in color and appear to have some level of shared intelligence. When separated from the colony, the worms will crawl towards its general direction, but demonstrate a reduced level of problem-solving capabilities. However, once they are back as part of the group, the Scouring Hive is a formidable predator. When hungry, this SCP becomes acutely aggressive, secreting a viscous, highly corrosive acid that can eat through flesh, hair, bones, and clothing alarmingly quickly. Capable of adapting its form to mimic other animals and humans, this SCP seems to find a level of thrill in the chase. Able to parrot a very rudimentary estimation of human speech, it can say names and even laugh, which it often does while pursuing its prey. It is theorized that this ability to impersonate others is used to lure subjects into dangerous situations, like young children playing alone in their garden, hearing a strange noise from over the fence. While it can take various forms, the Scouring Hive is at its most lethal when it chooses to attack directly. Taking the form of a kind of carpet of worms, it flows across the ground quickly, climbing surfaces, squeezing through narrow gaps, and finding creative solutions to stalk otherwise inaccessible targets. It has been known to swarm through various circuitous routes like drain pipes and air vents while on the hunt. Once it has reached its prey, it envelops them, coating them in that acidic secretion that rapidly breaks down living tissue into a slurry for the worms to consume. While it is unclear whether this is a genuine reaction or just another instance of parroting, this SCP seems to enjoy gloating at this stage, laughing at and mocking its prey as it consumes it. How a colony of worms has reached this level of cognition is unknown. While tougher than your average garden worms, the Scouring hive is not invincible. Susceptible to incineration, freezing, and full-body disintegration, SCP-906 can be neutralized if the need should ever arise. When under existential threat, the colony will begin to undergo a period of rapid reproduction. As long as just a handful of worms survive, the colony is able to rebuild itself quickly. That is why SCP-906 is currently held in secure storage in a 3x3 meter fully airtight, acid-resistant box. It is kept at a constant 5 degrees Celsius. At this cool temperature, SCP-906 operates at a much reduced capacity, consuming less food, reproducing at a reduced rate, and moving slowly. Should that temperature ever increase, all SCP personnel are to evacuate immediately and ready themselves to terminate any worms they see with flamethrowers and liquid nitrogen. While this super colony is currently contained, it is unknown whether more instances of these worms exist outside of the Foundation walls, slowly burrowing their way through the dirt towards one another until they have enough to start to feed.
It's late at night, and you're driving down a desolate stretch of highway somewhere in New Mexico. There's nothing out here except for you, your car, and the road. What you don't know is that you're about to encounter something. Something terrifying. There's no moon, and the sky is pitch black. Your own car is barely lighting up the dark road ahead of you. Just then, you spot something in your rearview mirror. It's a pair of headlights. There's nothing too strange about them, except that they are especially bright. Your eyes are so adjusted to the darkness that you have to look away. When you glance in the mirror again, you see that they're closer. Much closer. They must be going awfully fast. You don't know why, but something about the car behind you makes you feel uneasy. There's something off. You speed up a little. Maybe you can keep some distance from them. But the lights keep getting closer. So you speed up a little more. Still, they gain on you, growing bigger and bigger in your rearview mirror. You're getting nervous. They look like they are barreling right towards you. You floor it. The lights are able to keep up easily, though, and now they're right on your tail. No matter how fast you go, they stay right behind you. The lights are so bright and close that they're almost blinding. You're in a full-blown panic. What is going on? Now the lights are swerving back and forth behind you. What do they want? You take a sharp turn without indicating, but they follow you without difficulty. You keep your foot smashed down on the accelerator. Your engine is screaming, but they just get closer and closer. They're right on your bumper. The bright white lights burn your eyes so bad that you swat at the rearview mirror to point it down. You look up just in time to see the deer standing in the middle of the road. You slam on your brakes as hard as you can. Your tires squeal loudly in the night, and you brace yourself to both hit the deer and get rear-ended from behind. You stop inches from the deer as something incredible happens. The two headlights seem to split, passing by you on either side of your car. You and the deer lock eyes for a split second as if you're both thinking, "What was that?" before the deer hops away into the night. You don't know what's happening, but you're not going to wait around to find out. You throw the car in reverse and hit the gas before whipping it around 180 degrees. You can't remember how far the last town was, but there's no chance you're going in the direction of those lights. You drive as fast as you can, checking your mirror constantly to see if anything is behind you. Nothing. Just darkness. Maybe you're finally safe. No, they're right in front of you. The lights somehow appear out of nowhere right in front of your car. You turn the wheel hard to avoid a head-on collision and you go flying off the road, smashing your head against the window as the car goes flipping and rolling and tumbling. The car comes to a stop 100 feet off the road, upside down, with a lone blinking turn signal dimly lighting up the surrounding field. A single headlight approaches the car, but it's not moving like a vehicle. It's moving like an animal. You're concussed from the accident, and your vision is starting to fade. The last thing you see is a second light approaching. The next morning, the local sheriff is investigating the scene of a single car accident. Curiously, there's no body. just a few scraps of clothing, and a pair of tennis shoes sitting neatly in the upside-down roof of the car. Strangest, though, are the childlike handprints all over the dirty car door. The sheriff doesn't know what to think. What the sheriff doesn't know is that he has just come upon the aftermath of an SCP-745 attack, a strange and mysterious creature known as the Headlights. SCP-745 is the classification the SCP Foundation has given to a bipedal, nocturnal predator, whose hunting grounds are an abandoned stretch of highway in northern New Mexico. SCP-745's most distinctive feature, by far, is its head, the top of which is a bloated sack of translucent skin. There are no visible sensory organs present on the head, nor does it appear to have a solid skull, and the creature's brain can be directly seen through the semi-transparent skin, which is covered in a web of bioluminescent organs. These organs are capable of producing a steady output of light that's been measured between 1400 to 3200 lumens, which is the equivalent of bright xenon gas headlights. The entity has been observed to have the ability to change the color of this light, as well as flash it in specific patterns. It is theorized that it engages in this behavior as a way to defend itself, and potentially may also use it as a way to communicate with other members of its species. The rest of SCP-745's body is covered in skin that is a deep, dark, black color that almost seems to absorb light. This quality, when paired with their blindingly bright head protrusion, gives the appearance of a floating point of light in the darkness. Because SCP-745 entities hunt almost exclusively in pairs, with their preferred hunting grounds being remote sections of highway, they are easily mistaken for oncoming or approaching headlights. Two SCP-745 entities are able to move together in perfect synchronicity, running in tandem at speeds up to 180 kilometers per hour. Together, they will target lone vehicles that they spot on the highway and will begin to chase or run straight towards them, giving the unlucky driver the impression that a fast-moving car is rapidly approaching them. After they near the targeted car, they will attempt to stop it by any means necessary, whether by simply forcing the driver to pull over out of fear or by running them off the road completely. Once their prey has stopped, crashed, or become otherwise incapacitated, the pair will stop moving together and approach the car separately to directly assault and then consume the vehicle's occupants. Next to no remains are left following an attack, save for a few scraps of clothing in the victim's shoes. Other than the damage sustained during the accident, there is never any other sign of struggle or forced entry, with the only other evidence left at the scene being the childlike handprints from SCP-745's small front paws. Strangely, analysis of SCP-745's genetic structure has revealed that unlike humans, they are not a carbon-based life form, meaning it is unlikely then that they are able to derive any nutrition from the consuming of human flesh. It is theorized then that they may be hunting solely for sport or some other form of perverse enjoyment. This question remains unanswered, as currently there are no recorded observations of SCP-745 feeding in the wild, as successful attacks have never left any witnesses, and specimens captured by the SCP Foundation refuse to eat it all. No lairs, nests, or other refuge of SCP-745 has ever been found, nor has the Foundation located any breeding grounds or young examples of the entity. It's unknown how or if they reproduce, or when they may have first appeared. What is known is that they had established a wide hunting territory across the American Southwest until Foundation teams began a program to thin their numbers in the 1960s. The effort appears to have been successful so far, and all recent sightings of SCP-745 have been limited to a specific stretch of highway in northern New Mexico. SCP-745 has been classified as Euclid, and in order to limit potential exposure to civilians, the Foundation has purchased the land surrounding the highway, with traffic being redirected to other roads. Foundation security teams disguised as highway patrol officers are to remove any trespassers or lost travelers who accidentally find themselves on the dangerous stretch of highway. The security teams are also tasked with attempting to capture any instances of SCP-745 that they can, and any recovered creatures, live or dead, are to be loaded into Class 3 BCU storage containers and transferred to Site-17 for further study. Containment procedures that are able to preserve living specimens are still being researched, and currently, no examples of SCP-745 have survived for more than a week in captivity. However, seeing as there have been no new sightings of SCP-745 outside of the isolated and monitored stretch of highway, and all reports of phantom lights elsewhere in the country have not pointed to evidence of additional SCP-745 outbreaks. They are considered to be effectively contained.
When the businessman hears the diagnosis, all color and sound seem to drain out of the room. His life, a deflating balloon, a lanced boil. He'd been suffering headaches at work, the occasional nosebleed. Probably nothing, right? Probably just stress. Until he collapsed on the trading floor, and not long after, was sitting in the roaring belly of an MRI machine. Now, the words just hang in the air in front of him, huge and terrible. Brain cancer. Stage 4. Completely inoperable. Less than 6 months. His first instinct is to thrash against the bars of this new metaphorical cage. Chemo, radiation, green juice, experimental treatments in South America. But he can sense a grim finality in the doctor's tone that makes him realize there's no point in fighting this. He's going to die, and it's gonna hurt. At only 43 years old, the businessman had felt on top of the world. He worked on Wall Street, brokering the kind of high-pressure trades that could make or break a Fortune 500 company. He was the first one in the office every morning, and the last one to leave each night, without fail. He's a closer. He gets the job done. Sure, he's never had time for family. Okay, he doesn't hang out with his friends as much as he should, and maybe he hasn't taken a real vacation since he was in his 30s, but he always told himself that's something he can save for his early retirement. He's got his whole life ahead of him, after all. Imagine the fun he can have when he's made the deals of a lifetime and gets to retire early. And now, his whole life is still in front of him. Just there's only 6 months of it, and he's liable to spend the last few intubated in hospice care. Flash forward a month, and sadly, things are so much worse than the businessman ever imagined. Even on the high-strength painkillers they seem to dose him with on the hour, the pain in his head is unimaginable. Somewhere between a high, piercing whir and a dull throb, like a dentist's drill is meticulously tracing its way across and around every fold in his diseased brain. It hurts too much to even scream. The pain tightens the muscles around his jaw, locking teeth against teeth. He hasn't been out of his hospital bed for 2 days. He's terribly afraid, the way things are going, that he might never get out of his hospital bed again. All those years he'd wasted in the office, and all he got from them was a signed sympathy card. Get well soon, like he'd ever get well again. It was almost taunting. He'd given them everything, and got nothing in return. As he writhed in pain in his isolated bed, he imagined them already filing the notice for his replacement, help wanted, like they were the ones who needed help here. Soon, luck smiles upon him, and another dose of painkillers sends him off to uneasy sleep. It's the only way he can sleep now, even if this kind of medication-induced slumber feels like waiting around in a kiddie pool when you need to be fully submerged. But this time, something strange happens. He's lifted from his shallow chemical sleep as though he's being levitated from his dirty bedsheets, taken to a beautiful green place where the sun shines, but it doesn't hurt his eyes. Then he's walking barefoot across cool grass that he can feel between his toes. It's the most connected to nature that he's felt since he was a child, before he moved away to the city to follow his ambitions at the cost of his dreams. This place is different. He's approaching a copse of trees, seeming almost to guard a huge bush of holly and honeysuckle within. Is this heaven? He thinks. No, even for a dream. This is too tangible, too real. He notices in this dream that for the first time he can even remember, he's not in pain. He's been delivered from his terrible suffering. An answered prayer. A kind of welcome tiredness hits him, like after a hard day's honest work. He lays down in the grass just for a little shut-eye. Even after a couple weeks in bed, this feels like the first time he's gotten genuine rest. And that's when the thought enters his mind. Not his own thought, but in his brain nonetheless. Come find this place, and your pain will be at an end, my friend. It's an offer too good to pass up, and when he wakes with a new sense of calm, of purpose. The pain is still there, but it isn't the dominant force. His father had once said to him, "A man can endure hell if he knows he's going to get out." And now, decades later,
He understands what the old man actually meant. He's in hell, but that's okay. He knows the way out now. Drawing upon the last of his strength, he crawls out the hospital window. Lucky for him, he's on the ground floor anyway, so it's not too daring a stunt for a late-stage cancer patient to pull off. He can sense somehow that the wonderful place from his dream isn't far from here. He can run to it if he can summon up the strength, the willpower. And if all those 18-hour days in the office had taught him one thing, it's that he isn't lacking in willpower. So he runs. He runs barefoot across the blacktop, across roads where cars swerve and honk and call him crazy, across mud and grass and bramble. He must look like a madman in his hospital smock, running with holy purpose. But he couldn't care less. He knows the way out now. He knows the way out, and he's going to take it. Seconds turn to minutes, and minutes turn to hours, and he keeps running until he sees it. The dream becoming glorious reality. The lush grass, the trees, the holly, and the honeysuckle in all its beautiful, verdant majesty. He enters its presence and feels the pain in his head melt away. All the thoughts of agony and suffering, of how enfeebled he'd be when the intruder growing inside his brain saw fit to assassinate him. None of that matters now. He lays on the grass, more content than he's ever been, and smiles. Life is wonderful. Death is wonderful. Every sight, every thought, every concept, it all just drips with thick, sweet wonder. The grass and the vines reach up to receive him. They wrap his body, envelop it, weave into it, through it, become one with him as he becomes one with it. The plants engulf him, consume him. He knows it's happening, and he doesn't mind one bit. This is it, the dignified death that his cancer would have denied him, his happy ending. When the process is done, the plants recede. The businessman is no more, just an empty space where he once was. He is nothing. He is everything. Death can be such a bittersweet passage to a place the rest of us can't tread, but that passage is eased somewhat by an encounter with SCP-046, also known as the Green Relief. It's a cylindrical area of soft green grass also populated by a dense thicket of plant life, all tangled together into a large bush: white oak, European holly bush, and Kentucky honeysuckle. It recalls the fondest summer days of our youth, frolicking through green spaces that felt almost enchanted with all the carefree spirit of youth. To most of us, other than seeming like a visually appealing work of nature, there wouldn't even appear to be anything anomalous about SCP-046. This is not the case for anyone afflicted with a severe chronic or terminal illness, whose relationship with SCP-046 is likely to differ radically. You see, SCP-046 releases a psychic call to the severely injured and dying within a 50-kilometer radius. In their medicated dreams, they'll see the plants and imagine themselves laying down on that soft, cool grass and dying in peace on their own terms. And it doesn't just affect humans. Even non-sapient animals suffering from incurable diseases or wounds that won't heal will start dreaming about the sacred place. All these affected individuals will feel the need to make a pilgrimage to SCP-046, knowing on some level that it's the very last choice within their power to make, the thing that will bring them peace at long last. And before the Foundation discovered this place, it's exactly what they did. They sought out SCP-046, and upon entering the clearing, they felt the pain of their symptoms receding. They felt an odd sense of calm, of hope, something that they may not have felt in months or even years since their untreatable diagnosis. On feeling this, they would lay on the grass and let nature take its course. The Bermuda grass would grow around them, enveloping their body as a feeling of euphoria coursed through their endocrine system. A death, as their body spouts plants and melts gracefully into the collective, but not an unhappy end. A feeling of having been willingly reclaimed by the earth itself. There are no compulsive properties to the anomalous abilities of SCP-046, meaning it will never take anyone who doesn't truly choose to be taken. It's a way out for people who are genuinely doomed to be betrayed by their own bodies otherwise. People being taken by SCP-046 remain lucid and able to communicate throughout the whole process until they've been fully absorbed. During this time, they recount only positive feelings: joy, hope, relief, pleasure. They know what's happening to them and have no problem with it. Their bodies are completely broken down into nothingness within a 2-hour period, and their nutrients are absorbed into the plants. They have, in the truest sense, rejoined the life cycle. Because of the benevolent nature of this anomaly, and the fact that it cannot take anyone who isn't explicitly willing, it's been given the safe class. Containment procedures are appropriately measured as a result. The land has been acquired by the SCP Foundation and converted into private property, with several layers of fencing to keep it secluded from unauthorized personnel. The perimeter of SCP-046 is to be staffed by no fewer than 10 armed guards. However, those with life-threatening or terminal illnesses should be permitted to enter and have access to SCP-046, but only after passing a psychological screening period to make sure that they don't have self-destructive tendencies. This anomaly provides a valuable service and, as such, should not necessarily be separated from the public entirely, just subject to Foundation control and screening procedures to make sure nothing gets out of hand, because we can't avoid our date with eternity in the end. One way or another, we'll all end up in the dirt. Is it not better to become a part of the world that gave you life in the first place without pain or sorrow? Because that seems to be exactly what this unique anomaly provides. Now check out... Wait. No. Something's wrong here. These files. Oh no. Everything I just told you is only half true. These files were written by Dr. Edward Carter, a respected senior researcher at the SCP Foundation who also happens to be the project director for SCP-046. But the O5 Council, the individuals at the very top of the Foundation's hierarchy, have directly intervened and ordered serious revisions for the safety of all involved and the proper containment of SCP-046. Here is the true story. The first part happens exactly as before. The businessman with the misspent life, with all the achievements you'd read out in a resume, and none of the ones you'd want printed in your obituary, is told that he has brain cancer and only 6 months left to live. That estimation still proves to be optimistic, as he descends into a world of pain and weakness far sooner than he thought. He still receives a dream, telling him of a wonderful, perfect place out in nature, where all his problems will disappear. He still climbs out of the window and runs, spurred on by his desire for freedom from all the pains of his disease. He still makes the 50-kilometer odyssey to the clearing barefoot. It's when he arrives that everything changes. He doesn't feel the warmth and comfort he did in the dream. No, when he sees the plants, he feels as though he's a puppet being dragged by invisible strings, a man no longer moving under his own power. The businessman approaches the plants and falls to his knees in front of them, ready to receive their communion. But his pain isn't about to disappear. It's about to get so much worse. The mold gets him first, spreading across his body with paralyzing speed, melting tendons and shrinking muscles. He tries to scream, but feels that bacteria inside him is wasting away his lungs. He's being eaten from the inside out by ever-growing colonies of microorganisms as the plants just silently watch without eyes. Then from the rustling leaves spews forth a cloud of buzzing, chittering insects that set upon the businessman and devour, eating him a microgram at a time in their teeming millions. They devour until all that's left is silence. At least, in the process of eating the rest of him, they ate his cancer too. And that's that. Another prey lured and consumed. That deeply disquieting little tale is the O5 Council-approved version of SCP-046, codenamed to them the Predatory Hollybush. The urgency of their intervention comes not only from what they see as Dr. Carter's misrepresentation of the anomaly's true abilities and intent, but also from a growing fear that 046's mind-manipulating powers may be far stronger than first imagined. This could even extend to a powerful mimetic effect on the very Foundation researchers tasked with keeping it contained. So what is this anomaly really? According to the O5 Council's version of the file, it's a malicious predatory being
that slowly and insidiously imposes a psychic influence on the terminally ill, the mentally unwell, and people with self-destructive tendencies. It appears to them in their dreams like a siren song, if they have the misfortune of entering that aforementioned 50-kilometer radius of the anomaly, telling them that it will give them a respite from their suffering. But this is a poisonous lie that will lure them into even greater suffering than even their disease could provide. But still, in the depths of their desperation for any kind of escape from the terrible set of circumstances they find themselves in, they'll heed that siren's call and make their way to SCP-046 one way or another. But according to these files, they won't find that sense of dampening calm described earlier. They'll feel a powerful, almost magnetic psychic force. The kind of force that drags an addict towards the needle or the pill bottle, what the French call l'appel du vide, or the call of the void in English. They won't lay before the plant. No, they'll bow before it, and then the feeding will begin. But it's not the tranquil, gentle absorption into the grass and earth. It's a violent and painful process, as SCP-046's prey is quickly assaulted by a mixture of anomalously aggressive black mold spores, flesh-eating bacteria, and anomalous unknown insects. This continues until the entire body is paralyzed and decomposed alive, where it then becomes sustenance for the plant. We still don't know whether the anomaly is capable of growth or if the extent of its feeding could potentially lead to an increase of the range of its psychic abilities. The O5 Council has no interest whatsoever in tempting fate and finding out. They have also personally demanded an immediate reclassification of the anomaly from safe to Euclid containment class, and to have the severity of its containment procedures increased accordingly. Under the revised rules, the land has still been obtained by the Foundation and made into private property, but the layers of security around the perimeter have been beefed up considerably. Multiple fences, barricades, and even lethal effect traps, such as landmines, pit traps, and electric fences with fatal levels of energy, along with a number of firmly worded signs stating that this is indeed private property and severe penalties for trespassing apply. Any SCP Foundation staff working within 50 kilometers of SCP-046 are given regular and extremely rigorous tests to root out both early signs of life-threatening illnesses and any potential self-destructive thought patterns. Anyone who becomes injured to any extent within this zone is to be extracted and taken to a hospital outside the anomaly's effective range, just in case it somehow uses the state of injury as a way into the victim's mind. Any plants growing within range of SCP-046 are to be extracted and destroyed, the same going for any animals that attempt to approach it. Any members of staff who show an unusual interest in SCP-046 are to be treated with extreme suspicion, and then made to undergo a thorough medical and psychological examination. All alterations to the SCP-046 file are to be directly approved by the O5 Council, and anyone who attempts to make any alterations without the explicit permission of the O5 Council are to be immediately demoted and reassigned to a different case. Which reminds me. Dr. Carter, for his part, protested the revisions. He left an addendum on the file in direct opposition to the O5 Council's ruling, saying, "There is no evidence whatsoever that SCP-046 is predatory or has any desire to harm any creature unwilling to expose itself to SCP-046's effects. Suggest original containment procedures be reenacted and voluntary access to SCP-046 continued. No individuals are capable of breaching Foundation security once exposed to SCP-046. As such, there is no reason to deny afflicted individuals the opportunity for relief. Likewise, there is no reason to make this entity seem more hostile than it actually is, aside from a desire to portray every object in Foundation custody as dangerous. Some things must be contained simply because they are strange." Sadly for him, Dr. Carter's plea fell upon uninterested ears. In fact, his request actually painted him in a worse light in the eyes of his superiors. If SCP-046 does indeed have a mimetic effect on the researchers who work with it, then Dr. Carter has likely been compromised by that very effect. In light of the potential dangers of having someone who was essentially an unknowing double agent for the very anomaly he was researching involved with the project, the Council saw fit to reassign Dr. Carter to the SCP-1250 research team. In stark contrast to the extreme dangers posed by SCP-046, 1250 is just a selection of cassette tapes where the finer details of the content changes slightly with each time one of them is played. Though who's to stop this same effect on a long enough timeline befalling everyone on the SCP-046 research team? That is, if the mimetic effect claimed by the O5 Council is even real. Which leads us really to the parting question regarding all things SCP-046. Which story do you believe? Are you with Dr. Carter, believing the plants to be an angel of mercy, freeing the doomed from their pain? Or do you stand with the O5 Council in believing that 046 is a wolf in sheep's clothing, preying on the vulnerable in their lowest, most desperate moment for an easy meal? It's an answer I can't give you, so perhaps just let me know which side you agree with down in the comments below. The High Priest, adorned in the finest purple ceremonial robes, stands before the great, bull-headed statue in the darkened belly of the castle. The year is 850 CE. Masked worshippers whisper chants of holy reverence on all sides. He is in his element. Everything they do in service of the great god Moloch. All around them, banners bearing the sigil of the Brazen Heart hang. It's a celebration. Just a few hours earlier, their forces had invaded an enemy church in the hills. They'd slaughtered most of the congregation in a sudden whirlwind of bloody violence, staining their swords in the great Moloch's name. But as the High Priest had ordered, some of these blaspheming Christian churchgoers were taken prisoner and brought back to the castle for questioning. Here, the High Priest would deal with them himself. A sadistic, tooth-bearing grin crosses his face at the very thought of it. Soon after the ceremony, the High Priest descends into the dungeon, which he'd taken with a certain flourish to calling the Game Room. Here he keeps his private collection of torture tools from around the world, each of which he takes great pleasure in using against the worms who refuse to bend the knee to his bloodthirsty god. In the game room, the air is suffused with the stink of blood and sweat. The prisoners who still have tongues start to scream when the High Priest enters, knowing that everything is about to get so much worse for them. He's cultivated a certain reputation as a man willing to do anything to ensure the superiority of his infamous cult, the Brazen Heart. If ever you fell into his terrible clutches, escape was out of the question. The very best you could possibly hope for was a mercifully quick death. In the corner of the room, one unfortunate captive was twisted and shattered against a breaking wheel, but still torturously alive. In the corner across from him, another prisoner bleeds from the inside of a grimacing Iron Maiden that the High Priest had overseen the construction of personally. But that was only the very beginning of the High Priest's collection of terrible instruments. Prisoners teeter in agony on Judas cradles and Spanish donkeys. Skin is stretched and bones are cracked on racks. Some are pierced as they sit on the monstrous iron chair, while others simmer away in great vats of oil. Some scream as they hang from their wrists on the 10th round of strappado. Lead sprinklers, Spanish ticklers, thumb screws, crocodile shears, choke pears, melee boots, heretics' forks, bastinado sticks, scolds' bridles, scavengers' daughters. The High Priest has all of them, and he's adept at using them. But they all pale in comparison to his favorite piece, a prized possession, gifted from the bosom of Moloch himself, the Liar's Cradle. Such a perfectly ingenious tool for physical pain and mental terror, it's positioned at the very center of the game room, just so every other prisoner and every other device can see him using it and know that it's their eventual fate. A mighty stone furnace with huge metal grates on either side. As the High Priest approaches, he can see a terrified prisoner already writhing within the machine. When the prisoner sees him, the fear only gets worse. The High Priest would have no mercy for him. He'd spent 10 hours on the breaking wheel before this, and that felt like a pleasant sleep in a comfy king-sized bed compared to what he was about to endure. Two of the High Priest's sadistic acolytes jab at him through the grates with red-hot pokers. The High Priest grins and asks the prisoner what village he hails from. When the villager surrenders the information, the High Priest gives a sagely nod. He asks how old the prisoner is, and the prisoner says 27. Again, the High Priest nods. He asks the prisoner whether he would like to leave and be with his family again, and of course, the prisoner replies yes. He has no idea that they're all already dead. The High Priest smiles and says, "Just one more question, then, and you'll be free to go. What is my true name?" The prisoner pauses for a moment, which earns them another jab with the poker. He tells the High Priest that he doesn't know. He's jabbed again and again and again. He begins to cry and starts apologizing. He doesn't know the High Priest's true name. How could he possibly tell him, no matter how much he's tormented? The High Priest says, "Well, just give me your best guess. Who knows? Perhaps you'll be lucky." The game room falls silent, all eyes on the prisoner in the liar's cradle. His lip trembles, knowing from the dark legends what will happen when he answers. He breathes a ragged sigh, accepts his fate, and guesses incorrectly. Suddenly, the prisoner screams as he catches fire. The High Priest watches with unrestrained glee as the prisoner burns. He does so for around a minute, the fire burning far more intensely than it possibly should have. By the time it's done, the pile of ashes that was once the prisoner falls through the grate in the bottom of the liar's cradle. The High Priest turns to the rest of the room and asks, "Who's next?" Of all the many adjectives you could use to describe SCP-2128, also known as the Liar's Cradle, humane certainly isn't high on the list. This antique stone furnace was discovered deep in the dungeons of an undisclosed castle, believed to be a former refuge of a fringe occultic group known as the Brazen Heart, a cult of worshippers of the Canaanite deity Moloch, an entity mentioned several times in the Hebrew Bible. Among the deity's most notable traits is its bull-like appearance and the fact it requests burned human sacrifices. This feels extremely relevant, given the fact that the Liar's Cradle is all about giving its victims a fiery end. While the thaumaturgic methods used by members of the Brazen Hand to create the Liar's Cradle is unknown, what is clear are the cradle's capabilities and functions. When a human being is placed within the cradle and asked questions, a single lie will lead to them being anomalously incinerated. And the device's purview for a lie is frighteningly wide. A victim will be incinerated if something they say is factually untrue, regardless of the victim's personal knowledge. In other words, ignorance as an excuse will not save you. While the Brazen Heart was wiped out hundreds of years ago by soldiers of the Spanish Inquisition, the SCP Foundation has been able to glean some background information about the Liar's Cradle from a surviving document, a sheepskin scroll known as the Ignis Manuscript. This revealed that the cradle was invented around the 9th century CE, before being walled up in 1021 CE, and during its heyday, it was used as a torture device by Brazen Hand members against their enemies. While most torture is actually incredibly ineffective at getting information, studies have shown that under states of extreme duress, victims will simply say what they believe their captors want to hear in order to make the suffering stop. The Liar's Cradle is an excellent method of wringing information out of captives. Well, aside from the fact that one lie means the captive is immediately reduced to ashes. You see, SCP-2128 works on a true or false binary operating system that seems to imply an innate awareness of all knowledge. If you have enough captives to burn and know the right deductive or inductive questions to ask, it's possible to know almost anything in enough time. It's believed the Brazen Heart used the Liar's Cradle both for practical purposes and their own twisted amusement. Victims would be placed in the device and have their feet prodded with hot pokers while they were asked a series of increasingly probing questions about their life, being forced to divulge extremely dark and personal secrets or meet their doom on the pyre. It was a depraved combination of physical and mental torture. If even hearing about all this makes you feel a little queasy, nobody could blame you for that. The SCP Foundation, however, looked at the Liar's Cradle and saw incredible potential. As mentioned earlier, the Liar's Cradle bases its judgment on raw factual knowledge, not the knowledge of its particular victims, so anyone with enough people to burn can conceivably work their way towards discovering any binary answer. And given that the SCP Foundation has an almost unlimited number of D-Class personnel at their disposal, it didn't take long for them to realize all the knowledge that was up for grabs. They just need to make a few sacrifices along the way, hoping to save more people in the long run. Moloch himself would probably be proud. It was this somewhat morally dubious chain of thought that led to the creation of Experimental Protocol 37 Sparafusel, the Foundation's plan to utilize the Liar's Cradle to discover more information that would assist in their mission to contain anomalies and protect the human race. The protocol is outlined in a 5-step procedure that is as follows. 1. One D-Class employee, referred to as the Messenger, will be laid inside SCP-2128. 2. The Messenger will repeat statements as instructed from the prepared list. 3. After each statement, if the Messenger remains unharmed, the statement is to be marked as true. 4. As soon as the messenger is incinerated, a new messenger is to be provided. The statement that triggered the incineration is to be marked as false. 5. A new messenger will be assigned. Repeat as needed. While the total extent of these tests remains off the record, the official files on SCP-2128 have some fascinating supplementals about some of the results of Experimental Protocol 37 Sparafusel. The first set of tests was designated EP-37 Sparafusel-22 Keter Checkup and was conducted on January 10, 2014. The messenger in this case was D6238. The first statement this D-class was fed was, "The human race is in danger of extinction right now." Seeing as D6238 didn't immediately go up in flames, this was found to be true. The second statement was, "The danger comes from an item in Foundation custody." Much to the relief of the D-class, this was also found to be true, and he lived to make another statement. This statement was, "The dangerous item in question is located at a site in North America." This was, sadly, the D-class's last words, as this statement proved to be false, and he was immediately burned to death for his troubles. The next messenger brought in was a woman now known as D6239, after she committed an armed robbery that killed several innocents and landed her on death row. Her statement was, "The dangerous item in question is located at a site in Europe." This caused her to be immediately incinerated. The SCP Foundation then continued to narrow their focus on this matter over the next 13 D-classes. With the information they gained, they were able to narrow down that SCP-752, a subspecies of humans who are eager to displace and replace non-anomalous humanity, would be the cause of a containment breach that could potentially end the human race's dominance if they weren't stopped. D6253 was given the statement, "SCP-752 will breach containment within the next month." The answer was true. Next came SCP-752 will breach containment within the next week. Also, this proved to be true. D6253 would finally meet their maker with a false statement, "SCP-752 will breach containment tomorrow." But this opened the door for the final correct answer delivered to us by D6254, that SCP-752 will breach containment today. Armed with this vital information in the nick of time, the Foundation dispatched MTF News 7, also known as Hammer Down, their largest and most well-armed mobile task force, to the site in question. This quick thinking allowed them to quell the threat at the exact right time and save the world from an SK-class dominance shift scenario that would have left humanity in the dust. Using the Liar's Cradle, the SCP Foundation had just saved the world as we know it, and all it had taken was a handful of D-class lives. So naturally, the tests with the Liar's Cradle didn't stop there. Next came EP-37 Sparafusel-23, Knowledge Measure. As the name suggests, this test hoped to ascertain the extent of the knowledge the Liar's Cradle possessed, seeing as it could continue to come in handy for Foundation purposes. The first messenger was D7784, who was fed the statement, "SCP-2128 knows everything." This turned out to be false and led to the D-class's immediate incineration. However, the lead researcher on the case decided to take a different approach. Perhaps, he thought, the Liar's Cradle didn't accept the numerical designation that the Foundation had placed on it. The next messenger, D7785, led with the statement, "The Liar's Cradle knows everything," which proved true, because that allowed him to live long enough to be incinerated by his next statement, "The Liar's Cradle will tell us everything." After his incineration, D7786 stepped up to the metaphorical plate, first saying, "The Liar's Cradle will tell me everything I need to know." The Cradle judged this to be true. It did not, however, take kindly to, "The Liar's Cradle will tell the Foundation everything they need to know." It declared this statement false by immediately incinerating the D-class. After this incineration, the EP-37 Sparafusel project was out of its daily allotted D-classes and decided to call it a night. Their next test was the mysterious and controversial EP-37 Sparafusel-24 Sunday School Song, which utilized D7891 as its messenger. She was fed the statement, "Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world." The results of this particular test have been permanently expunged from SCP Foundation records. Next came EP-37 Sparafusel-25 Pinocchio Paradox, which was an experiment intended to see how the Liar's Cradle would react to logical paradoxes. Spoilers, it doesn't involve as much incineration as you might expect. First came D8232, who provided the statement, "Telling the Liar's Cradle a paradox is dangerous to Foundation personnel." This was proven to be false, and ironically, he was burned alive immediately.
Next came D8233 with the statement, "The Liar's Cradle is going to kill me right now." The Liar's Cradle bent its own rules by declaring this false, but only incinerating the D-Class enough to permanently disfigure him rather than killing him. D8234 was shoved into the cradle after that, making the statement, "The Liar's Cradle is going to burn me right now." This was proven through empirical observation to be false. 10 seconds passed without incineration. However, when D8234 exited the cradle, he complained about sustaining a small cut on one of the rocks that made the cradle while climbing out of it. This caused D8234 to rapidly succumb to a previously undiscovered form of gangrene and pass away in minutes. Finally, D8235 entered and said, "The Liar's Cradle is going to inflict physical harm upon me right now." This was proven false, and D8235 climbed out of the Liar's Cradle unharmed. At this point, however, he began to cry and scream out the word, "Goodbye," before dying via altogether more unpleasant means that I don't wish to discuss in great detail here. The last experiment we have on record here is EP37 Sparafusel-26, Subjective Opinion, which intended to see if the Liar's Cradle liked to turn logical gray areas into logical charred black areas. Messenger 1, D9224, made the relatively uncontroversial statement, "Golden retrievers are cute." The Cradle seemed to disagree, immediately incinerating him. The next messenger, D9225, delivered the counterpoint, "Golden retrievers are ugly." And just like that, he was up in smoke. However, when Messenger 3, D9226, delivered the wildcard statement, "Golden retrievers are tasty," everyone in attendance was surprised to find the Liar's Cradle completely agreed with this. When D9226 delivered the completely understandable reaction, "Wait, what? That's freaking nasty," he was immediately reduced to ashes by the Cradle's flames. With this line of questioning concluded in the strangest manner possible, the new messenger, D9227, was brought in. Before becoming a member of D-Class personnel, his name was Stephen Kemp, a cannibalistic serial killer who'd murdered and eaten 14 women before being captured, tried, and put on death row for his crimes. He delivered the statement, "I'm a good person." Surprisingly, the Cradle felt this was true and let him live. However, when Stephen decided to get cocky and chime in with, "Joke's on you, jackasses, apparently I'm Mother Teresa," he was immediately incinerated due to the fact that he was not, in fact, Mother Teresa. His ashes were soon accompanied by that of D9228, who made the statement, "The Liar's Cradle is sometimes incorrect," before being burned to death. Next came D9229, who allowed for the longest streak of unbroken statements in the history of tests performed on the Liar's Cradle. He said, "The Liar's Cradle speaks only infallible empirical truth." True. He said, "The Liar's Cradle is hungry." True. He said, "The Liar's Cradle's hunger can never be satiated, no matter how full it becomes." True. He said, "The Liar's Cradle would like to incinerate me right now." True. He said, "The Liar's Cradle is growing impatient." True. He said, "The Liar's Cradle sees delicious, warm meat on its plate and would very much like to be fed." True. He said, "The Liar's Cradle is angry that it is continually denied its meat." True. He said, "People meat is delicious." True. He said, "I am delicious." True. He said, "My skin is warm." True. He said, "The crackling of fire upon boiling drips of fat and rapidly cauterizing flesh gives the Liar's Cradle pleasure." True. After such an incredible streak that also allowed for a frightening insight into the apparent personality of the Liar's Cradle, D9229 was withdrawn alive. He was replaced by D9230, who said, "The Earth is round," and was immediately incinerated. It's widely believed that this outcome came from the Liar's Cradle maliciously interpreting Earth as dirt rather than the planet Earth, just so it could incinerate the subject. Just because the Liar's Cradle is largely objective doesn't mean it isn't incredibly petty, it would seem. Because of the static nature of SCP-2128, it has been given the rare, safe object class. Containment Site 403 has been built around the castle that currently holds SCP-2128, and a healthy supply of D-Class personnel is regularly siphoned off for EP-37 Sparafusel. The sadistic sorcerers of the Brazen Heart may be long gone, but in a strange and disturbing twist of fate, the researchers of the SCP Foundation are keeping the spirit of their work alive even today. The full moon hangs heavy in the night sky over the dense jungle canopy. Below, the darkened palm trees stand silent in the humid air, festooned with vines and lianas. and tropical insects hum in the undergrowth. The night is quiet and dark here, far from the city, in one of the farthest, most secluded provinces of the Philippines. One would hardly expect anyone to be out at this time of night. The young woman is hurrying home, carrying a lantern before her face so that she can see where she's going in the pitch black of the night. Her swollen belly reveals that she's at least several months pregnant, her new middle throwing her off balance just enough that she has to be careful not to stumble. A woman in her condition, she thinks, shouldn't be out at this time of night, and certainly shouldn't have to do household chores like this. But the work has to get done, no matter what. She carries a basket of wet laundry under her other arm. She is returning from washing her clothes in the river, and if she had planned things out better, she would have been home long before the moon rose. Unfortunately, she spent far too much time gossiping with several other village women before getting to work on scrubbing her filthy clothes against the rocks. Luckily, it's not too far from the river back to her home in the village. The worst thing that might happen, she reminds herself, is that she might lose her footing in the dark and trip over a rock or a root. There's no chance that she might run afoul of some nocturnal animal, she tells herself, even though the sudden chills down her spine and sweat dripping from her brow reveals the truth, that she doesn't believe that at all, and, in fact, she's getting more and more nervous as she staggers through the dark. It isn't just the threat of wild animals. She remembers the stories that her mother told her when she was a little girl, all about sinister supernatural monsters that live in these woods. Of course, those are just stories invented to scare children, she tells herself. She's a grown woman now, about to have a child of her own. She shouldn't be worried about boogeymen. She just needs to keep her head on her shoulders, and she'll be sure to arrive home safely. The lantern throws its light over a figure standing below the crook of a catmon tree. The woman jolts, nearly dropping her laundry. She gulps back a scream as she realizes that what she sees isn't a wild animal, but rather a person. "Oh, sorry," says the young woman, her voice shaking a little. "I didn't think anyone else was still out this late. I thought you were a wild animal." "Don't you worry, little one," says the figure in a soft, sibilant voice. The figure steps forward, and the young woman recognizes her. It's an old woman from the village, her back hunched and her long white hair falling over her shoulders in a messy tangle. The young woman feels inexplicably nervous running into this particular villager here in the jungle at night. Many of the village kids whisper that she's actually a witch who has all kinds of weird supernatural powers. Even some of the village elders are afraid to cross her for fear of getting cursed. "Where are you going at this hour? Someone in your condition shouldn't exert yourself so much." "I'm just heading home," says the young woman, hefting the basket of laundry for emphasis. "It's dangerous to be out so late alone. Here, let me walk home with you. There's safety in numbers, you know." Thank you." The young woman almost wants to protest that she doesn't need any help getting home, because she really does not want to spend any more time with this old woman. But at the same time, she is reluctant to say anything that might insult her. After all, even if the young woman doesn't believe in witchcraft, it's not like she wants to take any chances. Besides, the truth is that she is rather frightened of being alone in the dark, and any company is better than nothing, even if it's this strange old woman. "How far along are you, honey?" says the old woman, placing a hand against the surface of the young woman's protruding belly. The young woman grimaces. She doesn't like this old woman intruding on her personal space like this. The old woman's hands are wrinkled and veiny, flecked with liver spots, and her fingers topped with gnarled talons. The young woman wants to cry out at the sight of them, but she bites her tongue. Instead, she answers the old woman's probing question as calmly and politely as she can. Very nice, says the old woman, her rheumy eyes never straying from the young woman's belly, and her hands still rubbing against her stomach as if she's trying to reach something within. The old woman makes a strange sound in her throat, like she's smacking her lips in hunger, but it's hard to see anything in the dark. The young woman can only nod in confusion, but she quickens her pace. She hopes that she can get home soon, and once she's home, she can get away from her unfortunate travel companion. The old woman keeps pace, grabbing her younger traveling companion by the arm and holding tight. Her grip is surprisingly firm for such a seemingly frail old woman, and the young woman again wonders if maybe there's something supernatural about this ominous crone. She wants to pull her arm away, but the old woman's long claws pinch cruelly into her flesh. It's as if the old woman is silently warning her, "Don't pull away. I'm too strong for you to escape." "What a sweet little bundle of joy you carry there," says the old woman, as if speaking to herself. "What a delectable little burden." The young woman knows that she's still talking about her unborn baby, but all this mumbling just makes her more worried. They continue walking, the young woman staring resolutely at the small circle of illumination thrown by her lantern onto the path ahead, doing everything in her power to not look at the old woman standing at her side, for fear that she might scream. Why is she so nervous? Worse, does the old woman sense her fear? The young woman has heard that witches are easily offended, and that's the last thing that she needs now. She continues walking, the old woman gibbering and whispering in her ear, plying her with odd questions about her pregnancy.
Eating well, have you? You know it's very important to eat right when you're carrying, so that the baby can be born strong and healthy.
Right, says the young woman. She really doesn't need this unsolicited advice. She heaves an audible sigh of relief as the village comes into view over the next bluff. Thank God, she thinks, I'm almost home. She just hopes that the old woman will take a hint and leave her alone once they arrive at her doorstep. She wonders if this old woman might try to come into her home or maybe steer her towards some other destination. But what can she do? All she can do is keep walking home and hope for the best.
Is it just you, is it? Is the father in the picture, I haven't seen you with any young men lately, have I?
Asks the old woman. Her nosiness is really starting to irritate the young woman, enough that she almost forgets her fear. No, it's just me, says the young woman automatically. She immediately regrets that confession. What is this old woman planning? Is she up to some mischief? Now she knows that the young woman lives alone, and there won't be anyone around to see whatever this crone is planning. Her grip tightens on the young woman's arm as if to warn her again. The village is quiet and dark. Everyone else has already gone to bed by now, so the pair of them walk down narrow, still streets. The only sound is the crunch, crunch, crunch of gravel under their feet. After what seems like an eternity, they arrive at the front gate of the young woman's house. Well, here I am, she says, a little too loudly and firmly to be completely casual. This is my home. Thanks for keeping me company on my way home. To her immense relief, the old woman lets go of her arm. The young woman immediately pulls away, rubbing the deep bruises left by the old woman's gnarled talons.
Think nothing of it, my dear.
The old woman smiles widely, a long rope of saliva dribbling from her slack lips. Her teeth look jagged and misshapen. It's hard to see in the dark, but they look more like the teeth of a wild beast than a human. It must be her eyes playing tricks on her in the dim light, though. The young woman can't help but recoil in disgust, but luckily her face is hidden in shadows, so the old woman doesn't seem to notice.
I'm happy to help. I hope to see you again very soon.
The young woman doesn't wait any longer. Even before the old woman turns to leave, the young woman scampers across her yard and yanks open her door. She runs inside and pulls the door shut behind her. Her heart is racing, and her breath comes in ragged pants. She can feel the baby in her belly kick, suddenly agitated by its mother's fear. Shh, it's okay, she coos softly, patting her stomach and hoping that her tender voice will help to calm her baby. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. That old woman frightened me half to death. They say that she's a witch, and I'd almost believe it. What a strange experience. She pulls the curtain aside and peeps out the window. The old woman is gone. The young woman looks up and down the street, but sees no sign of her traveling companion. She inhales deeply and feels the tension drain from her body as she lets her breath out. Thank goodness that's all over. She can't explain why this whole night has unnerved her so much, but there was just something so uncanny about that strange old woman. She's glad to be rid of her. The young woman tries to put the whole experience out of her head as she prepares for bed. As she pulls on her nightclothes, she startles when she hears something heavy and loud clatter across the roof. It's not unusual for roof rats or other nocturnal animals to scurry across the roof at night, but this sounds louder than usual. It's probably nothing, she tells herself as she climbs into bed. I'm still just upset about meeting that old woman on my way home from the river. That whole thing must have jangled my nerves worse than I thought if I'm flinching at every little sound. I'll be fine when it's light out. The sooner I get to sleep, the sooner it'll be morning. Even though her nerves are rattled, she is quite tired after a long day, and it doesn't take long before she drifts off to sleep. The young woman's eyes close, and her breathing becomes slow and steady, the shallow rhythms of sleep. Inside her head, she might be troubled by strange dreams, but to any outside observer, she is dead to the world. Asleep in bed, she doesn't react to the clattering on the roof. Whatever is up there is making an awful racket as it drags itself over the roof tiles. If someone were around to watch, they would see that whatever is on the roof is no rat. It's a darkened figure, almost big enough to be human, but strangely truncated.
Two massive leathery wings unfurl behind it, extended to help the strange creature maintain its balance upon the roof. It drags itself forward using only its hands, long talons tapping at the roof shingles as it seeks a loose tile, anything that will give it access to the house below. Its finger finds a crack. Wheezing and panting, the creature leans forward, putting its eye to the crack to peer into the room below. The young woman is asleep in bed directly below, and that's exactly what this creature was hoping for. The young woman mumbles in her sleep, her mind filled with disturbing dreams. She's oblivious when, all of a sudden, something drops through that crack in the ceiling. It's long and slippery and covered in thick, wet mucus. It looks, for all the world, like a tongue, but it's far too long to be any human tongue. It drops lower and lower into the room, extending closer and closer to the young woman sleeping in her bed. The disgusting appendage caresses her face, leaving a wet slug trail of saliva across her forehead, as if it's looking for something, then brushes against her lips, and the tongue seems to find what it wants. Instantly, it snakes into her open mouth and shoots down her throat. The young woman starts to sputter and choke, her limbs thrashing and flailing, but still, she is held fast in the grip of sleep. Some wild nightmare is playing out in her head. Perhaps she fantasizes that she is drowning in a river or choking on some food or being strangled by a fiend. Whatever she's thinking, it couldn't be further from the truth, that an alien tongue has jammed itself down her throat. The tongue pushes deeper and deeper inside her until it makes contact with her womb. A trained anatomist might balk at the idea that the tongue could find her womb by accessing her throat, but somehow it has done exactly this, snaking its way through the labyrinth of her insides to find her unborn baby. A sticky aperture opens up at the tip of the tongue, revealing that the tongue is hollow, like a massive soda straw. It sucks up the baby like a vacuum, slurping it up, and out, the bulge of its prey traveling up the length of the tongue like a wild pig swallowed by a boa constrictor. Once the baby is gone, the tongue slides out of the woman's mouth and retracts back toward the ceiling, disappearing back through the subtle crack. There's a clatter on the roof again, followed by the soft flutter of leathery wings. The young woman settles back into a deep, still sleep, the awful sensation of suffocation having passed. The rest of the night is peaceful and quiet, but when she awakens the next morning, she finds that the nightmare isn't over. She wakes with a strange empty feeling in her guts. Something is very wrong. She throws aside her covers and stares at herself in shock. Her baby is gone. Her rounded belly has deflated back to its pre-pregnancy state, and she can sense, as only a mother can, that she is no longer carrying something within her. She shrieks in terror at this bizarre revelation. What could have happened? What could be responsible? That young woman just had an encounter with SCP-5201. SCP-5201 is a humanoid subspecies native to the Philippines, dubbed Homo sapiens visceralis, but known by many local names across the Philippine Islands, including the Aswang, the Tik-Tik, or simply the Viscera Sucker. But it is most commonly known as the Manananggal. During the day, an instance of SCP-5201 looks like an ordinary human. At a glance, there is no way to immediately distinguish an instance of SCP-5201 from a regular member of Homo sapiens. However, Foundation researchers have found that there do exist certain retinal irregularities unique to SCP-5201, so the agency has developed a portable retinal scanner for use in quickly identifying instances of SCP-5201. SCP-5201 is far easier to tell from an ordinary human at night when it undergoes a strange and startling metamorphosis. It unfolds a pair of membranous wings resembling those of a bat from its back. Even more startling, its torso splits in two. Its upper torso then flies off in search of prey, while its lower torso is hidden in a secure location until SCP-5201 can reconnect. SCP-5201 will seek out human prey, most likely relying on a keenly attuned sense of smell, and, once it has chosen a victim, will alight on the roof of their home and then snake its preternaturally long, tube-like tongue into the house below so that it can feed. SCP-5201 feeds by inserting its tongue into the orifices of unfortunate sleepers and sucking out their internal organs as easily as you would suck soda through a straw. SCP-5201 will happily eat human livers, stomachs, and intestines, but its favorite food is unborn fetuses. So much so that instances of SCP-5201 disguised in their human form can often be recognized by their tendency to drool at the sight of pregnant women. SCP-5201 are well known to local humans who live in fear of nocturnal attacks by the dreaded Manananggal. Interestingly, SCP-5201 can be repelled by Abrahamic holy objects like rosary beads or crucifixes, or can be staked through the heart with sharpened shafts of bamboo, very similar to the means used against vampires in Western folklore. SCP-5201 is especially vulnerable when its upper torso is out hunting, so it will always take the utmost care to hide its abandoned lower torso in a secret, secure location. If you can find the hidden lower torso, it is possible to kill SCP-5201 by sprinkling its exposed viscera with spices like garlic, salt, or vinegar, or failing that, even ash or urine. This causes an unusual reaction that is not yet fully understood by Foundation researchers, but will prevent the two halves from rejoining. If the two halves of the Manananggal cannot rejoin before dawn, sunlight will kill the creature. If none of these methods are available, it is also possible to repel SCP-5201 by using a specialized whip fashioned from the tail of a stingray. The SCP Foundation currently has an undisclosed number of domesticated SCP-5201 instances held in the Fauna Containment Wing of Site-235. Because this species has been known to practice cannibalism, each specimen is to be held in its own personal containment cell. While there are obvious ethical and logistical concerns with feeding human organs to SCP-5201, the Foundation has discovered that SCP-5201 can still easily thrive on a diet of any newborn mammal with a mass of at least 1 kilogram. Piglets have so far proven to be the most cost-effective and available options, but other species can be substituted as necessary. All entrances to SCP-5201 containment cells are to be guarded by at least 2 Level 2 personnel equipped with stingray whips, crucifixes, or some other object found to cause harm to SCP-5201. Unlike humans, SCP-5201 have an unusual asexual reproductive process. The lower body can regenerate a new upper torso via a process similar to epimorphic regeneration observed in autonomous lizards. Upper torso of an SCP-5201 would leave behind the parent's lower torso to search for a compatible female human. SCP-5201 would attack and consume this human, claiming her lower torso as its own. Smearing ash, urine, or spices into the exposed innards of the lower torso inhibits this process and prevents effective reproduction. The exact origin of SCP-5201 is unknown, although the creature is endemic throughout the Philippines, and historical records indicate that it has inhabited the island since at least 1500, when it was first described by Spanish sailors to the islands. Fossil remains and genetic testing indicate that it is actually an invasive species from outside the Philippine archipelago. SCP-5201 is currently believed to be extinct in the wild, following eradication efforts by the Foundation in the 1990s. An epidemic of SCP-5201 attacks in the early 90s prompted the SCP Foundation to join forces with the Supernatural Committee of the Philippines and the Global Occult Coalition to take action to prevent SCP-5201 from spreading to other countries. Dubbed Project Dipsy, the operation involved amnesticizing the major cities of the Philippines, funding propaganda campaigns to dismiss SCP-5201 as a product of folklore and urban legends, and eventually domesticating the surviving SCP-5201 population for cellular regeneration research. Because of its aggressiveness and taste for human flesh, SCP-5201 specimens regularly attempt to breach containment, and thus have been given the designation Euclid. And while the SCP Foundation has done its best to eliminate the threat of SCP-5201 in the wild, there's no guarantee that a few instances of this vicious monster might have slipped through the cracks and possibly even spread out into the wider world beyond its home in the Philippines. You still might want to search your room for any suspicious cracks or holes before you bed down for the night, because there are very few things less pleasant than waking up from restless dreams to find a long, slimy tongue jammed down your throat.
The single, piercing, high-pitched note echoes through the cathedral. It hangs in the air as the boy sustains it for far longer than his small lungs should be capable of. The boy is the star of the choir and is well known throughout his city and even beyond, and people come from far and wide for the chance to hear his perfect soprano voice. But on this night, there are only a few people scattered amongst the many rows of pews to listen to the choir as it practices, and for good reason. While the boy's lauded voice is as sweet and powerful sounding as ever, the choir itself is at its lowest point in recent memory. This nadir has occurred because many of the other boys who used to sing in the choir have vanished. The choir finishes its song, "That's all for tonight," and the boys begin to put on their coats and gather their things from underneath their chairs. The boy with the perfect voice feels something on his shoulder and spins around with affright to see that it is just the hand of the priest, who is also the conductor of the choir.
The priest is an old man with a deeply wrinkled yet kind face, and he reminds the boy that he is to head straight home. The boy promises the priest that he will go directly to his house, and the priest reassuringly pats the boy on the shoulder before walking away to give the same advice to each of the other boys. The boy steps out into the dark, cold night as the heavy cathedral doors shut behind him. It's softly raining, and he pulls his coat shut to try to keep out the damp and cold. As the boy begins to walk, he takes note of the closed newsstand across the street. The day's papers are still hanging outside and tell of yet another boy who has gone missing. This one from the next town over. There are still no leads in the cases, and parents have been growing angry with the police over the lack of any progress. As the boy walks down the darkened street, he fails to notice the shadowy figure that has stepped out of a dark alley near the cathedral. But soon, he hears the sound of feet on the wet sidewalk behind him. He glances over his shoulder and sees that the figure is walking the same direction as him. The boy looks back straight ahead, not wanting to draw any more attention to himself, and tries to increase his pace. As the boy walks, his well-trained ears quickly detect that whoever is walking behind him has sped up as well. The boy doesn't run, but he feels a surge of real fear begin to rise inside of him. The boy picks up his pace even more, and again hears the person behind him increase theirs. The boy is walking so fast now that if he went any faster, he'd have to break into a run. His house isn't far, though. He turns a corner, and he can see it. A quaint little home with warm light pouring out through the windows. He knows that inside his mother will be standing in the kitchen cooking dinner. He knows that inside is protection from the night and shadows. The boy looks behind him and sees the figure round the same corner. The boy can't wait any longer, and he starts to run. And he sees over his shoulder that the figure has begun to run as well. The boy is sprinting as fast as he can, his feet kicking up water from the sidewalk. He can hear the figure getting closer and closer to him, their long legs outpacing his own with ease. He's so close to his house, though. He's so close to being dry and warm and safe. He slides to a stop on the damp stones in front of the door and reaches out for the handle. Inside the warm little house, the woman cooking dinner is startled by the sound of the door suddenly bursting open. She turns to see an empty doorway. She steps out into the street, but it too is empty. Nothing present but the sound of the wind, and the almost imperceptible sound of a single note being sung. A beautiful, high-pitched note. What happened to the boy who was once the shining star of the cathedral's choir? And what of the other missing boys? Where did they all go? Perhaps they went to SCP-2678, a mysterious spatial anomaly that is also known as a city all of blood. SCP-2678 is an extra-dimensional space that so far is known to be accessible through exactly one entrance, a door in the basement of the Siena Cathedral in Siena, Italy. Strangely, the extra-dimensional location behind the door is only able to be entered by individuals who hold what could be termed traditionally Catholic beliefs. Perhaps even stranger, though, is that when it was first discovered, the door to the space was barred, and a metal placard had been placed next to it that read, SCP Foundation Department of Abnormalities. This might not sound especially odd, but it came as quite a surprise to the agents investigating it, as there is no record of there ever having existed a Department of Abnormalities within the SCP Foundation. Other than SCP-3790, of course, which is another padlocked room bearing a similar sign, but that file has been locked by the O5 Council, and we will have to save our exploration of that for another time. Back to SCP-2678. Individuals who have Catholic beliefs that enter the SCP-2678 space find that they emerge into a small, tent-like structure that appears to be a sort of forward operating base that has been built around the freestanding doorway. The outpost is abandoned, but there still remains a number of strange objects, including a biomedical laboratory-grade refrigerator containing numerous samples of blood and bone, various types of audio recorders ranging from old wax strip models to magnetic tape machines, and a computer terminal which, when activated, requests Foundation credentials. However, all attempts to access this computer have been met with failure, as it has rejected all attempts for reasons of insufficient clearance. Also found inside the outpost was the score for a previously unknown choral prelude titled Sul Golgotha, which when translated from Italian means on Golgotha, with Golgotha being the name of the hill that Jesus Christ was crucified on, according to the Bible. The last object found in the tent was a skeleton, though several bones were missing, including the hip bone and both forearms. Further examination of the skeleton revealed it to have belonged to a young male, though the exact cause of death was unable to be determined, nor was it clear whether the bones had been removed before or after the young man expired. Upon exiting the outpost, visitors to SCP-2678 will find that they are on the outskirts of a gigantic city that is floating in the middle of a red-orange void. The city is truly massive, having been measured at being over 300 square kilometers in size, and consisting entirely of cathedrals, palaces, and churches, all of which are in the Italian Gothic style of architecture. A never-ending rain of a red liquid that was found to be human blood falls on the city at all times and has stained the buildings a deep red color. And while they appear at first glance to be made of marble, analysis has found that all the buildings are actually constructed of human bone, specifically bones belonging to human males aged 7 to 12. Later tests of the material found within the forward outpost's biomedical refrigerator revealed the stored blood and bones to be samples taken from throughout the city. No life has ever been observed within SCP-2678, though visitors have reported hearing a high-pitched, discordant melody that seems to come from somewhere deep within the maze of structures. All attempts to record the sound have failed, as all audio equipment malfunctions when within the space, and playback of recordings results in them having only picked up the sound of the blood rain falling at a very high volume. This explains the various types of audio equipment found in the forward outpost, which were likely used in unsuccessful attempts to record the music. Attempts to trace the source of the melody through the labyrinth-like city will inevitably lead to the same building, which is an exact replica of the same Siena Cathedral that the entrance to SCP-2678 is located in, though it too is made of bone and has been stained red from the falling blood. And while the outside of the cathedral perfectly matches its real-world counterpart, the inside is a different story. Inside the cathedral, one will find only a single, large pipe organ. The pipe organ has had its longest pipes, the ones that produce the lowest notes, cut in half, and the corresponding pedal boards torn out. Pressing a key on the organ will produce a note that mimics an adolescent male's voice, and each key has its own unique voice. Just like with a normal pipe organ, a note can be sustained for as long as the key is pressed down, though after a time, the voice emanating from the organ will seem to take on a panicked tone. Attempts to determine just how the organ produces the notes have been met with failure, as the organ does not have a wind box, bellows, or blower of any kind, which would normally move air through the pipes. The organ has another effect within SCP-2678 besides just producing sounds, though, as whenever a note is played, the rain falling outside will transform into regular water. No matter how long the note is held, and the now regular clear rain falls, though, the buildings will never be washed and always continue to be stained red. Tests were performed on the organ in order to determine just how long it could sustain a single note, and the C7 key was pressed for over 20 minutes, during which time the voice continued to sing out, becoming more and more stressed and panicked-sounding as time went on. Finally, at the 23-minute mark, the key itself splintered into pieces, permanently removing the ability to produce that note. The splintered remains of the key were also observed to bleed for several days following this test. Expeditions sent into SCP-2678 have resulted in agents appearing to undergo a number of behavioral changes that, at present, are hypothesized to come as a result of hearing the organ music within. The psychological changes have included an increased appreciation for choir music, an ever-stronger belief in structured religion, more trust in authority figures, less trust in those coming from a lower social or economic status, and a reluctance to report crimes committed by fellow members of the SCP Foundation. These changes appear to be permanent as well, as there has been no evidence of them fading with time. Unfortunately, little to no progress has been made in understanding the mysterious and unnerving space, nor what the presence of a Department of Abnormalities forward operating base inside could mean, and so, for the time being, all further explorations within have been cancelled. The doorway in the basement of the Siena Cathedral has once again been barred, with the entrance hidden behind a bookshelf, and the ease with which the extra-dimensional location can be contained by the Foundation has resulted in it being given the safe classification. What do you think SCP-2678 actually is? Who built the strange city of blood and bone, if it was built by a person at all?
3 SCP Foundation agents stand before a large warehouse. Their mission is simple. Enter the building, find the observation unit that has gone missing inside, recover the data from it, and leave. It should be easy, but the rundown structure they're standing in front of
is no ordinary building. This is SCP-015. The leader of the group, a large, muscled man who goes by the codename of Agent 6, slides open a large door on the front of the warehouse, and immediately the whole group is struck by a sight that makes them reconsider just how easy this mission is going to be. In front of them is not a wide-open warehouse floor, but a cramped tunnel leading deeper into the building. The group has a job to do, though, and so the three head inside, Agent 2 first, followed by Agent Lon, the data specialist, and finally, Agent 6, the expedition leader in the rear. As they enter the narrow hall of pipes, the light from their flashlights plays off the floor, walls, and ceiling. Flashlights are one of the only items allowed in SCP-015, and they reveal what the researchers had told them in their briefing, that many of the pipes aren't made of standard materials, but instead are all sorts of strange substances like wood, glass, or even bone. The odd series of pipes have formed a twisting tunnel leading deeper into the warehouse. The group must be careful, since the floor is uneven, with pipes occasionally sticking up out of the floor like tree roots, ready to trip the unobservant. The three follow the corridors of pipes along the path that they each had to memorize. As they come to branching paths, Agent 2 speaks the series of turns they must take aloud. Left, left, right, left, right, right again, straight, right. And so on as they go deeper and deeper. They'd have to follow the directions exactly if they hope to reach the place where the modular robotic vehicle should be. Left, straight, straight again, right. Just a couple more turns and they'd reach the point where the MRV had sent its last signal before going offline. As they walk, though, they find that some of the passageways are getting more difficult to pass. The pipes have closed in at certain points, choking the already small tunnels down to mere crawlways. At one particularly narrow point, the group must get down on their bellies and pull themselves along the ground. After Lon and 2 exit the tight passage, Agent 6 suddenly calls out to the 2 agents ahead of him. "What is it? What's wrong?" 2 asks. "I'm stuck," comes the response from 6. Lon and 2 grab 6's arms and begin pulling. With a loud grunt from all of them, 6 finally comes free. His pant leg is shredded from the thorny wood that one of the pipes in the narrow tunnel is made from, but he's free, and they can continue on. Finally, after what seemed like an hour of walking, they finally find it. The modular robotic vehicle that had been sent in to investigate the current state of SCP-015. There's something very strange about the robot's condition, though. It looks like it has been speared right through its primary observation unit. A smooth black pipe that appeared to be made of dark fabric had pierced the vehicle right through its camera, but the lens didn't appear broken. Instead, it looked as if the pipe had somehow connected with it, docking inside the lens housing as if the two parts were made for each other. Other pipes had protruded from the floors and walls as well, snaking into open spots on the vehicle and lifting it up a foot off the ground. They looked over the robot, which was held helpless in the air, its wheels slowly spinning as its internal battery ran down. The agents walked around the MRV, examining it, looking confused about the fate that had befallen it. 6 suddenly broke the silence. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Lon wasn't sure what to do, though. As she got closer to the robot, she noticed that a foul-smelling substance was dripping from the pipe that had merged with the camera. Her job was to remove the data from the MRV, but they also had strict orders not to damage anything in SCP-015. So what was she to do about the robot? Wasn't it technically a part of SCP-015 now? She was worried that if she removed the data cards, then SCP-015 might... Well, she didn't know exactly. 6 didn't buy it, though. The researchers may have told them that 015 reacts, but he could see now that it's just a bunch of weird pipes. Maybe it grows or moves a bit, but how would it even know they were there? It hadn't shown any signs of sentience, let alone sapience. He wasn't going to hang around in here any longer than he had to, though, and if Lon wouldn't get on with it, then he would. 6 moves to the MRV and flips open the data cover on its side. More of the fetid liquid pours out, but he ignores it. Lon and 2 both look at each other. Did the other hear that too? It sounded like steam venting from somewhere deep inside SCP-015. 6 doesn't seem to have heard it, and begins to remove the thin data cards from the MRV. With the data now recovered, he decides to see if he could free the vehicle from the pipes. It wasn't necessarily a mission objective, but why let good Foundation property go to waste when it's right here in front of them? 6 pulls first at the MRV, then the pipes that were running into it, but he can't get it to move. It's completely stuck, seemingly fused to the pipes. "Come on, we've got the data, let's get out of here," 2 says. But 6 isn't done trying. He sets his flashlight down and uses both hands, pushing against the wall of pipes with his foot to gain additional leverage, when suddenly, there's a creaking sound. "Ha! I think I got it." But 6 was mistaken. It wasn't the sound of the MRV coming free that he had heard, but the sound of the floor underneath him giving way. 6 falls into the floor up to his armpits, and the other 2 agents rush to help him. But as they do, they notice the glow and immediate burst of heat coming from the hole. Thickly flowing molten glass begins to fill the hole, and Agent 6 cries for help as they desperately try to pull him free. His cries turn into screams of desperation as they each grab an arm and, after a struggle, finally manage to free him and drag him from the hole. 6 is no longer screaming as he is pulled free, though. His eyes and mouth are locked wide in sheer panic. Lon is now the one who starts to scream, as she realizes that they have pulled only the top half of Agent 6 from the hole above the fiery pit. The bottom half of his body is completely gone, burned away by the heat of the liquid glass. There's no time to be shocked, though, because pipes begin to hiss and ping all around them. A wooden pipe above 2 and Lon suddenly bursts, sending a cloud of dust flying into their faces. It's powdered glass, and it starts to pour out of the broken pipe, covering what's left of 6 completely. 2 spits out a thick stream of blood, his mouth shredded from the glass particles, as Lon desperately tries not to rub them deeper into the cuts in her eyes. They both know they can't stay here, though. They have to run. The pipes are deafening as they move as quickly as they can back the way they came. It sounds like a train is barreling through the building. They're surrounded by chaos. Boiling chemicals pour out of one pipe. Tiny slicing rose thorns spray out of another. They come to a crawlway that's just a couple feet wide, but it's their only way forward, and they have no choice but to enter. 2 dives in and starts crawling. Lon is hesitant, but a blast of steam from a pipe near her head convinces her she has no choice, and she follows after him. 2 wriggles through the narrow passage and is surrounded by more sounds of pipes creaking all around him. Each one seems like it might burst and pour who knows what deadly substance onto him. But he has to suppress his fear and keep moving forward. Finally, he emerges into a wider hallway. He turns and looks back at the hole. Lon should have been right behind him, but there's no sign of her. He sticks his head back in and calls for her. There's no response, but he can hear her still in there, somewhere in the dark, struggling. He has to help her. 2 gets back into the passage and starts crawling. She couldn't have been that far behind him, probably just around the next turn. But as he crawls around the bend, there's nothing there, just another wall of pipes. The passage has been sealed up. It's a dead end. He presses his ear to the wall and can hear Lon screaming on the other side. He hits his flashlight against the pipes in anger. The pipe shakes for a moment, then bursts, spraying out a black liquid that covers his hand. It's some kind of corrosive acid, and he screams as it burns through his gloves to the flesh beneath. He quickly crawls backwards out of the narrow tunnel and emerges back out into the wider passage. 2 cradles his hand, trying not to look at the exposed bone. "I'm sorry," he cries as he runs through the tunnel of pipes towards what he hopes is the exit. "I'll get help. I'll come back, I swear." Lon can't hear his promises, though. She heard what she thought was a pipe burst followed by 2's cries, but she doesn't know now if he's dead or alive. She decides she has no choice but to go back the way she came. Maybe there's another way out. But after moving just a few inches, her feet touch a solid wall. She's trapped in a space no bigger than a coffin. She feels around, but there's nothing here in the dark. Nothing at all. Just smooth, fuzzy, warm pipes. No, wait. There is something. A gap in the ceiling. But it's just the open end of another pipe. And now, there's something dripping out of it. Droplets of whatever the substance is land on her face, and then a full stream of liquid pours out onto her. She coughs as it gets into her mouth, but then realizes that it's sweet. It's honey? At least it wasn't molten glass or deadly acid. Maybe she could even survive for a time on the liquid until another expedition team came to rescue her. Her brief moment of hope is cut short when she realizes that the pipe isn't stopping and that she's already lying in an inch-deep pool of honey. Lon beats on the walls and ceiling as the honey continues to rise around her and screams for help. She tries to plug the pipe with her fingers, but it's no use. Nothing can stop more and more of it from pouring out. The honey continues to rise around her, and all she can do is scream and claw at the pipes that have created her tomb. She presses her lips to the ceiling in an attempt to gain one last breath before the honey completely fills the space. Her final choking gasps are sickly and sweet as the honey fills her lungs. Agent 2 keeps running through the tunnel of pipes. His hand no longer hurts, at least, either from the shock or from the fact that all the nerve endings had been burned away. The horrible sounds coming from the pipes seem to have stopped too. Maybe he really would make it out of this alive. Lon might have found another way out too. There's no telling how many routes through this maze of pipes exist. He would probably exit the building to find her outside waiting for him. Poor Agent 6, though. He never had a chance after opening that cover on the MRV. His thoughts are abruptly interrupted, though, when his foot catches on an unseen pipe and he falls forward onto the floor. Or rather, he should have fallen on the floor. Instead, a pit opens up in the ground, leading to a steep, sloping floor of pipes. He screams and tries to stop himself, but the slick liquid covering everything makes it impossible for him to slow his descent, and he begins to slide down the pipes. His dimming flashlight shows what seemed to be an endless tunnel of pipes stretching down into the dark. The tube of pipes twisted this way and that, slamming him into the walls on either side, tumbling him head over feet. And the descent never seemed to end. He screamed until his voice went hoarse, then gave out entirely. He didn't have any way to mark the passage of time, other than when his flashlight finally started to flicker and then dim, before finally dying. He slid down the endless tunnel of pipes for what felt like days in the darkness, far deeper than they physically should have been able to go. When the friction of the pipes began to tear his skin away, it was almost welcome. At least there would finally be an end. Following the loss of the SCP-015 recovery team, the data on the modular robotic vehicle was deemed non-vital, and no further expeditions were authorized in order to try and recover it. SCP-015 is a mass of pipes, vents, boilers, and other various plumbing apparatuses that have completely filled an otherwise nondescript warehouse located in a major American city. Anytime the warehouse is not being directly observed, the pipes will begin to grow, filling nearly all of the available space in the building, but also trying to connect to other nearby structures through the sewer and other subterranean infrastructure systems. The current best estimate of Foundation researchers is that the building contains over 190 kilometers of pipes, which range from just 2.5 centimeters to over 1 meter in diameter. While some of these pipes will look new, others have the appearance of being rusted or damaged, with many showing signs of leaking. The pipes are made of a strange assortment of materials as well, including bone, wood, steel, pressed ash, human flesh, glass, and granite. Oddly, no pipes composed of lead, PVC plastic, copper, or any other material one would normally expect to be used for the production of pipes have been found. But by far the strangest anomalous quality of SCP-015 is that it appears to react to aggressors. Should the building detect that the personnel inside of it are carrying tools, or if they make any attempt to either damage or repair any of its pipes, they will trigger an immediate reaction. Pipes near the offending subject will often burst, spraying them with a variety of liquids that have included oil, mercury, rats, a species of insect not yet identified, ground glass, seawater, entrails, and molten iron. More and more pipes will continue to burst around the subject until they either retreat from SCP-015 or are killed. SCP-015 was discovered by the Foundation after reports that pipes emanating from a warehouse had mysteriously started to connect to multiple other nearby structures, with no obvious answer for how or why they had suddenly begun emerging from the structure. The pipes were eventually able to be cut back and are now solely within the warehouse once again, but the human cost of containing SCP-015 has been high, and so far, 11 SCP personnel have been killed in their interactions with the anomaly, and an additional 20 are still missing. All of the missing are presumed to also be dead, though there have been reports of banging and screaming coming from within the building that may indicate they are still alive in some form. SCP-015 has been classified as Euclid, and because the building itself is impossible to move, it has been effectively contained on site. The Foundation maintains a gap of at least 2 meters around the warehouse, and no structures are allowed to be built that make contact with the building's outer walls. Should any protrusions from SCP-015 be detected, the pipes are to be immediately capped and sealed. Internal exploration of SCP-015 is permitted with approval from senior staff, but following numerous losses within the site, expedition teams must consist of 3 members, all of whom are equipped with safety lines and GPS tracking. The teams are not allowed to bring any hand or power tools within the building, nor are they to attempt any repairs or maintenance of any kind while inside. There's no need to enforce these rules, though, seeing as SCP-015 appears more than happy to terminate the offenders itself. The SCP Foundation contains many anomalous locations, though SCP-015 may just be one of the strangest.
If he breathes, the bear will see him. Lying flat on his stomach, the boy has no choice but to watch as the hulking brute eats his father before his very eyes. Lying in the thicket just a few trees away, the boy knows that any small movement he makes could prove fatal. A bear this large, hunting for its hibernation, will have no issue chasing him down in a split second and doing exactly what it did to his father, to him. The boy is utterly powerless. All he can do is stay deathly still and watch. They'd found the tracks too late. On the way back to camp, they'd been following the wooded cliff that lines the ocean's edge. Bows and salmon slung over their shoulders, they'd been so proud of their catch and the prospect of bringing it back to the tribe that they hadn't kept their wits about them. By the time they'd seen the enormous prints in the dirt, the sound of lumbering footsteps were already echoing through the trees behind them. The boy's bow is too far out of reach. He dropped it when his father pushed him into the thicket. He's got the knife hanging at his side, but he doubts it's long enough to even get through the bear's fatty hide. In contrast, the only thing protecting him from its bite is the leather hide slung across his shoulders and a woven garment from the tribe's elders. One slash of the bear's claw, and he'd be. A breeze ruffles his hair. The boy's eyes widen in horror. That wind hadn't come from in front of him, but from behind, blowing his scent, his fear, directly towards the bear's nostrils. The boy plants his muddy palms into the dirt, staring at the animal. Its nostril twitches, then twitches again. It half turns its head, sniffing the air. Maybe it won't bother with him. The bear's turning back to its meal already. The boy lets out a sigh of relief, and a twig snaps. The bear snarls and whips its head around. For a second, the two of them lock eyes, predator and prey. Then the boy takes off running. Fast as he can, he leaps through the undergrowth, ferns and nettles whipping at his shins. He fumbles the knife out of its sheath and slings the water skin off his shoulder, throwing it wildly behind him. He doesn't know if he hit the bear. He doesn't have time to turn around and see. It's going to be on him in an instant. Up ahead, he sees sunlight streaming through the thick trees, the cliff edge. If he can just get to that, maybe he can climb down and... No, there's no time. Besides, bears are better climbers, better swimmers, better runners. All the boy can hope for is that he's a better jumper. Him and the boys from the tribe have leapt off plenty of cliffs along the shore, but never these ones. There are too many rocks, too many shallows. But the thundering of four enormous paws behind him is looming larger and larger. He can almost feel the bear's hot breath on the back of his neck. There's nothing for it. Here goes. The trees clear, the sun blasts his skin, a claw slashes at his back, and the boy launches himself into the air. The wind carries him. The weightlessness of wheeling his arms and legs through the empty sky is almost enough to make him laugh with joy, until the boy looks down. The cliff is higher, much, much higher than he'd realized. His momentum carries his torso forwards into a tumble. He's not going to land straight, and he can see jagged rocks everywhere beneath him. The boy closes his eyes and crashes into the sea. All of the air is slammed out of his lungs. His knee hits something hard and sharp in the water. A swell throws him away from the shore and pulls him deep. Without air in his chest, he can't float. Kicking hard as he can, the boy swims upwards, eyes still screwed shut. His face bashes into a sandy rock. No, that's not upwards. Which way is it? Which way should he swim? The ocean current rolls him over and over. Darkness fills his mind. But his feet find a hard surface, and he pushes against it, launching himself through the water, kicking as hard as he can. The darkness fades. Light. The boy's head breaches the water, and he splutters for air, rubbing the water out of his eyes. He looks around wildly. The sea has carried him away from the cliff and out into open water. It's lifting and dropping him with each wave, carrying him this way and that, like a flower in the wind. And there, traversing the cliff face, scrambling down the rocks, is the bear. The boy's stomach turns. It reaches the bottom of the cliff and sees him there in the water. Tipping back its head, it roars at an almighty volume, deafening the boy over the sound of the waters. Even from this distance, the animal looks impossibly large. It dwarfs the boulders that line the water's edge. It slips into the water, barely making a ripple, and kicks off from the shore. Going straight for him, the bear is covering the distance so fast, he only has seconds left. With barely the strength to keep himself afloat, the boy knows he'll never be able to outswim this creature. Instead, he takes a deep breath and looks up at the woods, remembering all of the happy moments he'd spent in there with his father. A current swells beneath the boy and almost throws him out of the water. An enormous shadow flies through the depth beneath him. A whale? It couldn't be. Whatever it is, the shadow is swimming straight at the advancing bear. So fixated on its prey, the bear doesn't even notice what's approaching until it's too late. The ocean explodes. A blast of water as tall as the cliffs themselves shoots up into the air and showers the boy's head. Somewhere in the midst of the spray, a monster erupts from the depths. Snapping its jaw around the bear, it lifts the animal into the air and throws it against the cliff. The impact is so strong that a small landslide follows the bear's rolling body as it tumbles back towards the water. But the boy has eyes only for the monster emerging from the sea. Crawling up the rocks with one gnarled foot after another, the boy can hardly make sense of what he's looking at. It seems to have some kind of scaly hide, harder than the rocks surrounding it. A wave crashes against the monster as it leers over the bear and sinks its teeth into the animal's hide. Unable to look away, the boy kicks out and starts swimming away up the coast. Only once he's a long way around the bay does he dare to clamber out and back onto land. That night, once the rest of the tribe have gone to sleep, the boy can't help but lie wide awake in his tent. Without his father here, it's not the same. Quietly rolling up the hide doorway, the boy slips out into the night. They're camped by a small cave with beautiful smooth walls inside. They say it's the cave of their ancestors, the place where all life started. The fire in the cave has to always burn. Fortunately for him, the cave is empty. The boy stares up at the wall in wonder. Finger drawings of animals, hunters, mothers, shamans, gods, and forests fill almost every part of it. Only one space remains in the corner, a finger painting of the rocky cliffs with the swelling sea beneath. Dipping his finger into the paint, the boy sits by the wall and starts to paint. A terrible monster crawling out of the sea, with a scaly hide stronger than any rock. That's it. You know that from just some finger painting. The archaeologist turns to the group of researchers surrounding him in the cave. UV lights are set up all along the walls, with the blue and violet shapes revealed all across the stonework. The archaeologist can't help but empathize with the spiritualism of their long-forgotten ancestors who'd lived in these caves thousands of years ago. The professor was the one who asked the question, a cold woman standing well over 6 feet tall with a crop of fiery ginger hair. To him, she seems less of a scientist and more of a military leader. But what does he know? "Walk with me," she says and leads him out of the cave. Personnel fills the surrounding area. Most of them are armed. Cranes lift huge sheets of reinforced lead plating into place. Several mysterious vats line the edge of the forest, each adorned with more warning and hazard signs than you'd see in a nuclear power station. The two of them have to pause for a moment as 3 tanks roll past them. The archaeologist breaks the silence. "You know the reason I started all my research in the first place? Did I ever tell you that story? Every early civilization in the world, whether it's ancient China, Mesopotamia, South America, Northern Europe, all these cultures, you take a look at their mythology and what do you find?" The professor ignores him, instead choosing to bark orders at a group of agents talking over coffee. They all immediately dump their drinks and get back to work. "What one thing do they all talk about, even though it never existed? Dragons. All these disparate people with no contact with one another, all of them still draw pictures of dragons." The professor stops walking at the edge of the cliff. The pair of them stand there, surveying the vast ocean stretching out in front of them, as researchers, agents, and workers rush around behind them. After a long pause, the professor asks him to proceed. "In ancient Hebrew texts, when they talk about God creating the world in 7 days, what happens on day 5? The professor flicks the hair out of her eyes and replies curtly, "God created fish in the sea and birds in the sky." "Well, not exactly. Look at the original Hebrew. He created all of the fish that teem in the sea, sure, but he also created Leviathan, a serpent-like monster from the depths, as old as the world itself. You think that's what we're dealing with?" "Maybe. Or something worse." By nightfall, preparations are operational. Enormous floodlights switch on, one after another, illuminating an enormous steel box with an open lid at the top, surrounded by armed agents, huge net launchers, and several tanks. It all seems a bit excessive as far as the archaeologist is concerned. He isn't officially still supposed to be here, but in all of the scramble for the Foundation to get the capture site ready, no one noticed that he had stuck around. From the viewing platform several hundred meters away, he has to watch it all unfold through a pair of binoculars. Out above the water, suspended from one of the cranes, is an elephant carcass. The professor told him that the Foundation had even marinated it for extra flavor. He had only been recruited into this project a couple of months ago, but from what he could tell, it's been an ongoing priority for the Foundation for several years now. The scale of the operation of just setting up at this site is already mind-boggling, but they've been chasing up leads like this for years now. Arriving at scenes, they suspect this creature has been sighted in the past and setting up traps for it. He was only brought in out of desperation. The Foundation had exhausted all recent hunting grounds and was trying to cast the net even wider. He'd just been quietly working on his university research paper about ancient reptile drawings when the agents had let themselves into his office. But staring through his binoculars now, the archaeologist knows there's no chance of this operation actually working. They have floodlights, for crying out loud. No intelligent predator would come anywhere near that elephant carcass. Movement. Not in the waters or any of the lit-up areas. No, there's something in the forest line, just behind a group of researchers. He reaches instinctively for his walkie-talkie, then stops himself. How many times had he got jittery before and reported something preemptively? The agents already don't take him seriously as it is. He can't be jumping at shadows. But there it is again, a shape moving fast through the trees. He scans the binoculars this way and that, trying to find it. Just a group of researchers there, some agents there, supply crates, researchers, agents. Wait, weren't there more of them a second ago? He looks closer. Someone's gone missing. He clicks on the radio. South Lookout Team, report in. Nothing. South Lookout Team? A sickening feeling settles in his stomach. With all those bright lights everywhere, they're casting a lot of dark shadows. He has to do something fast. Running down from the lookout point, the archaeologist takes off running through the trees to the site. He holds his radio up to his mouth as he goes, trying to get anyone to respond. But it's hopeless. The thicket cracks and crunches under his feet as he tries to make his way through the dark woods, ignoring the feeling that crawls up his neck of being watched. A boulder blocks his way. The archaeologist grabs onto it with both hands and hauls himself on top of it, stopping for a moment to catch his breath. From up here, he can see the floodlit capture site. The tanks and cranes still sit rumbling, ready to go at a moment's notice, but he can't see any ground crew anymore. He switches the radio to the open channel and calls out for anyone to respond. The professor's voice crackles back at him.
What are you still doing here? This is a highly dangerous operation that you don't have clearance for.
He yells at her to cancel it. They need to evacuate the site immediately. It's compromised. She laughs derisively and cuts off the channel. No, she has to believe him. People are dying, and more of them will if she doesn't. The archaeologist whispers to himself in the darkness. It's no monster. It's just an innocent creature. You're playing with a power you don't understand. It's strange. For a moment, he swears he almost hears a voice whispering something back to him in the woods. But when he looks around, he's all on his own. He has to keep moving. The creature could be anywhere. Hopping off the jagged boulder, the archaeologist takes off running through the forest once more, looking over his shoulder every few steps. The light must be playing tricks on him. In the darkness, he can't see the boulder he was standing on a moment ago anywhere. He bursts out of the tree line and into the clearing right next to the steel box. A ramp leads up to the top of it, with a large trap door suspended over the open lid. Well, if he wants to be seen and heard, that's where he needs to go. The archaeologist runs up the ramp and waves his hands wildly in the air. The tanks all turn their turrets to aim at him. The crane holding the enormous steel lid for the enclosure looms menacingly above his head. And there, marching out onto the field, looking absolutely furious, is the professor. Her red hair looks more like a ball of flames right now. We need to evacuate the site now! It's here! She snarls and marches up the ramp to meet him, jabbing a finger in the archaeologist's face. He suddenly realizes how much taller she is. You are not jeopardizing our one chance of catching this thing. Get out of the way, or I will have you detained. Besides, what evidence do you have? But the archaeologist isn't looking at her. Instead, his eyes stare in horror at the elephant carcass suspended behind her. There was a huge, reptilian bite mark taken out of it. A testing bite, like the ones given by sharks. She turns to follow his gaze, and all of her rage is washed away in a sickening delight. It's here. A scream from the crane holding the elephant makes them both jump, but by the time they look up at the cabin, all they see is a hulking shadow leaping away into the darkness. The professor clicks on her walkie-talkie and starts issuing commands. No one responds, except the tank crews. She tries again. Radio silence. Now the gravity of the situation really starts to hit her. Eyes wide with panic, she runs off down the ramp, barking into her radio and leaving the archaeologist up here on his own. Suddenly, under all of these lights, he feels very exposed. It could be anywhere in the shadows. Footsteps, heavy, planted footsteps tremor through the ground, and out of the woods walks the creature. Several meters long, fat from all of its hunting, the beast that would soon be known as SCP-682 slinks into view. It looks up at him, standing there on the trap door over a metal box, and looks like it's almost ready to laugh at how easy this will be. Boom! The tank blast hits the creature square in the torso, knocking it sideways. Boom! 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 The 3 tanks open fire one after the other, laying round after round into the colossal reptile, kicking more and more dust into the air. Before long, there's a crater in the ground so large that it looks almost like an asteroid hit it. Smoke and dust fill the air. The archaeologist's eyes fill with tears. That majestic creature, roaming the earth long before mankind ever did, exterminated just like that. Cowards. That's what people really are. Cowards. But as the dust clears, a groaning sound echoes around the clearing. The archaeologist shields his eyes and peers into the crater as best he can, but there's nothing there. Boom! He wheels around and almost falls backwards in shock. The SCP has snuck through the haze and leapt onto one of the tanks. It bites and tears at the armored bodywork, doing all it can to destroy it. In a panic, 2 of the tanks point toward one another and fire, destroying themselves in the process. The creature rounds on the remaining tank and bites down hard on the barrel. The tank fires, the round going straight down the monster's throat and exploding inside its gut. The backdraft from the blast shoots back through the tank, and a puff of smoke trails out of the hatch at the top. And suddenly, once again, the clearing is quiet. Turning back to the archaeologist, SCP-682 slinks towards him, smoke still curling up out of his leering teeth. With heavy, thunking steps, it climbs the ramp towards him, stopping just short of the trap door. The 2 of them stare each other in the eye, predator and prey. Neither move for a moment. Then it opens its mouth. The archaeologist closes his eyes.
Do you know that you disgusting creatures deserve this?
He opens them. Did the monster just speak?
What do they hope to accomplish by attacking me?
He gulps hard. That whisper he heard in the woods, the rock he'd been standing on. They're scientists. Scientists always try to learn more things, understand the world better. We think you can't be killed, so they're testing their hypothesis.
The creature growls. The stench of rotten flesh fills the archaeologist's nose. It takes a step towards him, then another. The archaeologist runs. He'll leap off the other end of the platform. It's a big jump, but he could make it. The predator's breath is on the back of his neck. He jumps, just as the trapdoor gives way. With an enormous thud, the SCP falls into the steel enclosure. Before it has a chance to move, the crane unhitches the steel lid, and it crashes down into place, sealing the monster inside. The archaeologist lands in the dirt and rolls onto his back to see the professor, wild-eyed and cheering, up in the crane's cabin. He lies there on his back, panting and staring up at the stars. A clunking sound echoes through the clearing, and the gurgle of a liquid flowing through pipes. He sits up, adrenaline still pumping through him. The professor has plugged a pipe into the metal enclosure and is running gallons and gallons of liquid into it. He follows the tube with his eyes, all the way to the enormous hazardous vats on the edge of the clearing. Hydrochloric acid. His eyes widen in horror. The professor laughs at him. Come on, cheer up. We're just scientists, that's what you said. Just testing a hypothesis.
Honestly, no. It doesn't feel like anything is working, the woman tells the man who is seated across the room from her. She's been coming to see him for several months now, but she doesn't feel like she's made progress on any of her issues. The man listens and nods as he jots down some notes on his pad of paper. He has something he wants to discuss with her. She may feel as though she's run out of options, but there is one other thing they could try. He's seen lots of success using this with his other patients, though it's a technique that many would deem to be rather unconventional. The woman is unsure. Unconventional techniques don't exactly instill her with confidence. But at this point, what did she have to lose? The man stands up and motions for the woman to follow him. He leads her out of his office to a section of his practice that she's never seen before, where they stop in front of a closed door. On the door is a window covered by a curtain, and she notices that there are a set of strong locks as well. He unlocks the door and ushers her inside, where she finds that it is a small room, maybe 10 feet across at most, with thick padding on the floor and walls, and bright white lights set into the ceiling. He tells her to wait there just a moment and to make herself comfortable before he excuses himself. The woman looks around at the padded room, wondering just what it is that she's agreed to. The man returns, and now he's holding something. A garment bag. He unzips it to reveal a dark piece of clothing inside, but when he takes it out, she sees now that it isn't clothing at all, At least, not any normal kind. It's a straitjacket. The woman is scared, unsure if she wants to go through with this, and he does his best to put her at ease. If she's uncomfortable, she certainly doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to, but he reiterates that he has had great results using this with some of his other patients. It's been something of a miracle cure. Well, no, cure is the wrong word. He corrects himself and explains that this won't cure her in the way that she's probably thinking, but rather what he's found is that this therapy is able to provide a momentary relief from symptoms, a chance to see what life is like without being plagued by the issues that have led her to seek his help. Once she has gotten a glimpse at what life is like without these burdens, they can work towards bringing her back to that point through other therapies and techniques. This might be just the breakthrough she needs to finally make something work. The woman is still skeptical, but she is desperate to find anything that will help her escape the thoughts constantly plaguing her mind so that she can get back to being the person she wants to be. And after a moment of thought, she agrees to go through with the procedure. The therapist tells the woman to hold her arms out in front of her and places the straitjacket on her. She can see and feel now that it is made of black leather, and it fits her perfectly, almost as if it were made just for her. She turns around, and he pulls the straps tight before fastening them in place. The woman, standing in the small padded room and fully constrained by the black leather straitjacket, turns to the man and asks, "Now what?" "Now we wait," he tells her before backing out of the room. "A warning, though." "Now a warning?" she says. "This is a one-off procedure. You can only do it once," he tells her before closing the door. She's confused. Is this the procedure? He's locking her in a cell? What is going on? She never should have agreed to this. Her mind starts to race, filling with bad thoughts, and they get even worse when the lights suddenly go out. She starts to panic, breathing heavily in the dark from both fear and from being constricted by the leather straitjacket. She calls out that she has changed her mind. She doesn't want to do this after all. No response. She's serious. She wants to end this right now and leave the room. It isn't working. It's actually making her feel worse. All the fears and anxieties that plague nearly every moment of her life come rushing in at once. Her mind races as she can feel all the telltale signs of a panic attack starting, a million little issues pulling her apart at the seams, leaving her stretched out and helpless to do anything to stop it. But then suddenly, there's a change. Like a cool breeze blowing across her face, the feelings of hopelessness and despair start to dissipate. Her anxieties feel as though they were melting away into the dark, leaving her with only the comforting embrace of the straitjacket. It isn't that she feels happy necessarily. She simply feels normal, content with herself and her situation. It's an incredible feeling, and she basks in the joy of not feeling bad. She doesn't know how long she's in the dark room feeling content. Minutes, maybe hours. But eventually the door opens and the lights come on. Her session is over. She leaves the office with a new perspective on life. Most of the feelings of satisfaction have gone away already, but still she feels renewed, ready to tackle her issues so she can feel what she felt in the straitjacket again, so she can feel normal. By the next day, though, her new lease on life is completely gone, and she's on the phone with the man pleading with him to let her come in immediately and wear the straitjacket again. He warned her, though, that it was a one-off procedure. Too much exposure is dangerous. She needs to focus on other treatments instead. The woman only wants to come wear it for a little bit, though, just a few minutes to feel that way again. He tells her it's impossible, though. She should be happy it was so successful and move on to new techniques. And besides, he's leaving for a conference and won't be back for a week. They can discuss things again when he gets back. It's raining that night as a figure in a dark coat breaks the glass on the front door and reaches through to unlock the door. The woman enters the office and hangs her wet jacket on the wall. Her flashlight illuminates the room they have their sessions in. No one is there. She walks deeper into the building and spots the door to the padded room. She passes by and goes even further to a back room that she's never been in before. In the room, against a wall, is a metal trunk. She opens it to find the dark garment bag with the leather straitjacket inside. "What do you want me to do again?" the young man asks. He was just supposed to be delivering a pizza, and his boss would be angry to learn that he allowed a customer to invite him in. "This is my office," she tells him, "and I'm working on some new techniques for my patients, but I need to try them out myself first. That makes sense, right?" "Well, sure, I guess," he responds. "But for this particular one, I need some help. It's a secret, though, so I can't get any of my colleagues to help me. But you can help me, right?" The young man nervously swallows the soda she's given him and nods in agreement. She explains that all he has to do is help her tighten the straitjacket, close the door, turn off the lights, and listen. In a little while, when she's finished,
She'll ask him to come inside and take it off her. That's it. The young man still seems a little wary of the request. "What happened to your door?" he asks, but she ignores his question and pushes a wad of cash into his hand. The young man shuts the door to the padded cell, and a moment later, the lights go out. The woman is almost immediately taken back to the same mental place she was before. All of the thoughts that constantly repeat in her mind, the ones that she's never able to turn off, suddenly go quiet. She sighs with relief in her dark, safe space. But then, she feels something. Not in her mind, but on her face. A twitch, just a little facial spasm. But then another. There's something wrong. Her face suddenly feels very tight, like it's being stretched. Her eyes grow wide. Her mouth pulls into an unintentional sneer. The young man hears the woman's muffled cries from inside the room and opens the door. But what he sees causes him to emit his own scream before he turns and runs out of the office into the stormy night. What the heck? The man thinks as he looks at the broken window on his office door. He enters to see that the door is still unlocked and that there's glass on the floor inside. He walks inside his office and looks around and doesn't see anything. But in an instant, there's a moment of realization. He runs to the back, to the door to the padded cell. The door to the room is ajar, and he listens. Is that breathing inside? He opens the door to the dark cell and turns on the light. The black leather straitjacket is sitting in the middle of the floor, except it isn't the floor anymore. Now, instead, a stretched layer of skin is spread across the padded room, with the outline of flattened bones visible underneath. The man's mind can't comprehend what it is that he's looking at, but then he sees it. In the far corner of the room is the stretched-out face of the woman, her eyelids pulled too tight to blink, leaving her eyes staring up at him. Through a stretched, contorted mouth, she whispers, "Help me." Is there anything crueler than an object that is able to treat your mental health issues, yet has some of the most devastating side effects imaginable? In this humble doctor's opinion, no. And today's anomaly is just such an object. Designated SCP-482, it is perhaps better known as the mentally mutating straitjacket. SCP-482 is a black leather straitjacket that is quite similar in appearance and construction to a mass-produced version, though as you'll see, it is completely unique. Although the straitjacket is comparable in size to other medium-sized versions, it is somehow able to fit virtually any and all body types and sizes. A tag inside contains the words, "Made in Xiaoyan, hand wash only, no acerahena powder," in faded text, though neither the city nor acerahena powder appear to exist in any records that the SCP Foundation has been able to locate. There are no signs of wear on SCP-482, but there are several cuts on the straps that cinch the garment closed, and testing has shown that it is able to be further damaged, though any additional investigations of the extent to which it can be damaged have been suspended due to the lack of viable duplicates. The real anomalous effects of SCP-482 occur when the straitjacket is worn, and the two main effects, which occur one after the other, have been designated as time point alpha and time point beta. Time point alpha is used to refer to the initial stage of a subject wearing SCP-482 and can last a varied period of time, though it is most often between 1 and 6 hours of wear. During this period, the subject will report feeling mentally better, and any negative mental afflictions that they suffer from or are forced to deal with will appear to disappear completely. Additionally, any medications that they may be on will have their effects negated entirely, leading to them returning a result on Foundation standard psychological tests that is consistent with a baseline mentally stable individual. The effects of time point alpha are temporary, and once the subject is separated from SCP-482, any mental illnesses they are living with will be seen to return, but they will disappear once more if the straitjacket is worn again. However, the amount of time a subject spends experiencing the effects of time point alpha are cumulative, and given enough time inside of the straitjacket, they will always eventually reach the second stage of SCP-482. Time point beta refers to the subsequent time period that passes if a subject is still wearing SCP-482 once time point alpha lapses. During this period, the changes to the subject will no longer be mental, and instead, they will begin to experience physical effects. The exact nature of the physical changes will vary, though they do seem to be related in some way to the subject's own mental health issue, with the degree of the change also seemingly related to the severity of their issue. Through the testing of SCP-482 by Foundation researchers on D-Class personnel, a number of different manifestations of the straitjacket's anomalous effects have been documented, and they're recorded in a file designated Experiment Log SCP-482. In the first test, A male D-class diagnosed with schizophrenia was placed inside of the leather straitjacket. He immediately reported feeling eerily calm, and he was observed to simply sit and stare at the wall with a blank expression for 2 hours and 49 minutes, a period which was later determined to be his time point alpha. Time point beta began 1 minute later at 2 hours and 50 minutes when the subject's body began to contort, and he remarked that he was in a great deal of pain. Various parts of the subject's body began to increase in mass and size, including his head, as his eyes began to bulge out. He called in agony while attempting to make eye contact with the researchers who were observing through a glass viewing window for 34 minutes until a termination order was given. Subsequent examination of the subject's body revealed that his body mass had increased by roughly 180% due to rapid bone and muscle growth. It's unclear what physical process caused this, though genetic tests showed that his DNA had abnormally shortened telomere strands. The observers also reported they experienced an unnatural feeling that rendered them unable to move in a normal manner while the subject was making eye contact with them. For the second test, another male D-class, though one who had been diagnosed with a paranoid personality disorder, was placed in the straitjacket. During his alpha exposure, he reported a satisfying quiet in his head, with none of the disembodied voices that normally plagued his thoughts speaking to him. He still appeared content after 2 hours and was taken out of the suit, though after requesting to be placed back inside, he was allowed to return to wearing SCP-482. After an additional 1 hour and 30 minutes, though, the beta exposure began. Visible bulges appeared on his neck and shoulders, and after 4 minutes, he began screaming for someone to stop talking and get out of his head. More bulges appeared on his body, and audio recording equipment in the room picked up mysterious sounds that analysis has revealed to have been as many as 7 distinct voices speaking in an unknown language. The termination order was issued 25 minutes later, and a later autopsy revealed that each bulge actually contained a fully formed mouth and voice box. Observing researchers also reported that during the test, they had seen flashes of movement in their peripheral vision, and subsequent review of the taped footage revealed small shadows appearing and disappearing in the room throughout the test. Next up was a female D-class who had been diagnosed with hyperphagia, which is a disorder that can cause an extreme increase in appetite and can remove the ability to satiate one's hunger. Upon being placed in SCP-482, she remarked that, "For the first time ever, I am actually full." She felt this way for 1 hour and 58 minutes, after which she began to feel a pain in her abdomen. The D-class fell into the fetal position as the pain increased, and her limbs were observed to begin retracting into her body, accompanied by loud snapping sounds as presumably the bones started to crack and break. "Oh God, it's eating me! Oh God, it hurts!" she cried out, and a termination order was immediately issued. The autopsy that followed revealed that the woman's body had somehow formed a second digestive system that had begun to consume her own body mass, and if left unchecked, would have eventually digested it in its entirety. Following this test, the observing researchers reported that they were unable to satisfy their own hunger cravings with normal amounts of food, and several of them actually had to be restrained by security staff in the on-site cafeteria. Luckily, these urges appeared to fade after several days. In the final test, a D-class personnel with pyromania was placed in SCP-482. Despite the impulse control disorder normally causing them to start fires whenever given the chance, they now ignored all of the flammable materials offered to them by researchers. After 1 hour and 33 minutes, though, thermometers in the testing room noted a sudden sharp rise in temperature. This was followed by a powerful explosion of heat and flames when the D-class spontaneously ignited. The testing room was completely destroyed, and nearby hallway A13 suffered catastrophic damage. All observing researchers were also lost in the conflagration. SCP-482, though, survived. Surprisingly, the body of the D-class was also able to be recovered, and though the autopsy was made difficult due to the heat it still exuded, a discovery was made. Inside the body, a new organ was found, one that appeared to be sustaining some type of constant reaction that produced heat, as well as strong magnetic waves, and this organ has been placed in containment for future study. SCP-482 is currently being kept in a containment locker at a secure site, with access restricted to Level 2 personnel and above. The maximum time allowed for testing is 1 hour after mutations manifest, and any test subjects who reach time point beta are to be terminated. Following termination, SCP-482 is to be removed from their body prior to autopsy. The straitjacket is then to be thermally cleansed and all biological traces of the prior subject removed before it is used for testing again. Now I bet you are telling yourself, well, this sounds pretty easy to contain. I bet this is a safe class anomaly. And normally, I would agree with you. but perhaps you noticed something strange in the experiment log. Did you pay attention to the reports from observing researchers that they too had begun to experience some rather unusual effects simply from watching SCP-482 affect a subject? Did it seem to you as though the mentally mutating Straitjacket was somehow projecting the mental illnesses experienced by the subjects onto those observing it? It appears that there may be more to SCP-482 than first meets the eye, and this mystery only deepens when one reads the containment procedures on this anomaly's file and realizes that the person overseeing SCP-482 research is none other than SCP Foundation legend, Dr. Bright. Is the actual testing of SCP-482 not actually taking place on the D-Class personnel, but on the SCP Foundation researchers? A convoluted experiment designed to discover the true extent of its anomalous effects. When it comes to this Euclid-class anomaly, only Dr. Bright knows for sure.
The hammer cracked the metal with a thud that caused the old wooden floor beneath him to rattle. Sparks flew, but the metal was refusing to cooperate. Again. Dripping sweat, he cursed under his breath and wiped his greasy hands on his pants. The place smelt of burnt oil, rust, and desperation, like the result of every other half-finished experiment scattered across the room. The basement had become a dumpster of failure, its floor littered with discarded weapons. The latest one, a mangled piece of junk, lay there with the others, looking just like the rest, a trophy of his mistakes. It was hot, too hot. But then again, there was no air conditioning in the makeshift lab. Not that the heat bothered him. The world outside, the real world, where the Argentine military junta was busy terrorizing guerrilla forces, was no concern of his. He was here. He was safe. Down in his concrete fortress, no one could interrupt him, except maybe his own mind, but that was another story. He had come to Argentina in the years following Germany's defeat. After the Allies liberated it, he fled, using his connections to slip away to Argentina, where there was a place for those like him. The scientist had put the past behind him. At least that's what he told himself. He swore that nothing would stop him from continuing his work, not even the fact that the world had already moved on from his twisted vision of the future. His hands shook as he dropped the hammer. The old wooden bench creaked under the weight of his frustration. For years, he'd tried to force this alien metal to cooperate, thinking it could be perfected, but it was inconsistent. It didn't bend to his will. Not yet. He didn't need this. The war was over, but he still hadn't finished. The defeat of Germany had been a failure, a mistake, and he was here to correct it, to finish what had been started. And what better way to do that than to create a weapon that could never run out of ammunition? The loud clang of the hammer hitting the metal was his only answer, followed by a trail of sparks. One more failed attempt. This wasn't the breakthrough he had been dreaming of. No, this was just another pile of junk that would gather dust. The gun, an MP5K PDW submachine gun, refused to accept the strange alien metal, sputtering out sparks and misfires. But then, something caught his eye. The metal fused. It finally fused. This time he could feel it, a connection. He paused, wiped his brow, and stared at the gun. What were those white things where the bullets should be? He blinked. He stared harder. The chamber was filled with them. They looked like teeth. Jagged, sharp, a real mess. But human teeth. He pulled the trigger. A groan echoed through the room, coming from the weapon itself. Or was it the metal? Maybe it was just the sound of his brain breaking. The teeth fired. He stared at the weapon. Teeth? He mumbled, barely believing it himself. It was a submachine gun, not a dental office. He stared at the weird projectiles, unsure if this was what he wanted. This wasn't what he wanted.
Perfect,
he muttered, the sarcasm thick in his voice.
Sure, teeth. Why not?
The weapon groaned again, like it had just woken up from a long, bad dream. He pulled the trigger again. More teeth. He winced. This was not the ultimate weapon, not what he had been imagining while he'd sat in his basement for years, drenched in sweat and desperation. He stared at the teeth for a moment too long, then tossed the weapon aside like a disgruntled child throwing a toy away. It landed on the growing pile of failures. It didn't matter. It was just another flawed creation, one more mistake to add to the stack. But hey, that's how science worked, right? Fail, fail again, then maybe, just maybe, succeed. Eventually. But as he wiped his hands and stood, There was something eerily familiar about the way the weapon had grown. It sounded alive. Or perhaps it was just the stress getting to him. Either way, he had no time to dwell on it. He needed a break. The world outside was burning. But for now, the only thing he needed to fix was this stupid weapon. Just then, the house shuddered under the force of the first crash. The door upstairs was smashed in, wood splintering into jagged pieces. Soldiers piled into the small, darkened entryway like a swarm of locusts. They were coming. The scientist had no idea, of course. He was too deep in his self-imposed exile to care about the war raging outside, but they were coming. The Argentinian military, feeling the pressure of guerrilla forces nibbling away at their control, had gotten wind of an arms dealer supplying weapons, and, as luck would have it, they had been pointed in the direction of his little basement lab. An anonymous tip was all it took to set the military in motion. In their minds, they were storming a minor arms dealer's den. They didn't know he was a Nazi scientist, still hiding out in the shadows of a war that had ended decades ago. They didn't know they were about to bust in on a man who was redefining the future of weapons with teeth. The sound of boots thumping on the floorboard echoed through the house. The soldiers closed in fast. The scientist didn't register the intrusion. By the time he heard them, it was already too late. A soldier's voice shouted from above. It was muffled, but it was enough to snap the scientist into reality. He barely had time to scramble for the hidden drawers, frantically trying to shove his latest creation out of sight, hoping it would go unnoticed. His hands were greasy, his palms sweating from the adrenaline surge. He had spent days, weeks, even years on this work, and it was finally coming together, even if in ways he didn't understand. But the soldiers weren't going to care about his failures. They were going to destroy them. The basement door flew open with a violent crash. The scientist barely had time to reach for the nearest tool, a wrench, before he found himself staring up at the barrel of a rifle. A grizzled soldier stood there, framed in the doorway, eyes wide with the confidence that only a man with a weapon could have. The soldier didn't speak. He just gestured for the scientist to move back, motioning with his rifle, as if the scientist was already a defeated man. The military swarmed in, 4, maybe 5 soldiers, each with a weapon at the ready. They began tearing through the basement without hesitation. They rummaged through every shelf, throwing aside books, overturned flasks, and other equipment the scientist had meticulously organized. It wasn't that they cared about his work. It was that they had orders. Their eyes skimmed the basement like a scavenger looking for bones, their rifles swishing through the air with each swing. Old furniture was knocked over, clutter tossed aside, and the occasional broken part of an old weapon. The scientist stood against the wall, sweating, his throat dry as he swallowed. There was no way out. He glanced at his creations scattered on the table. What they were looking for was simple. Anything that could be used against them. Anything that didn't belong in a quiet, isolated home. One soldier lifted a rusted grenade off the table, studied it, and tossed it aside, useless. Another grabbed a gun that had long since stopped firing, shook it, and tossed it away in frustration. They didn't even look at the books on the shelves, the notebooks that had once carried his genius. To them, it was all just junk. But then, a young soldier found it. He was poking around in a corner, trying to stay low and keep his hands busy. He was just a kid, really, eyes wide with the excitement of being a part of something bigger. As he picked through the mess of discarded guns and strange contraptions, his hands brushed against something cool and smooth. A small shiver ran up his spine, and he glanced around quickly, but no one was paying attention. So, he pulled it out. The weapon. The MP5K PDW. It didn't look like much, at least not in comparison to the other firearms scattered around. It was almost elegant, sleek in a way that didn't seem to fit in with the rest of the gear. The soldier stood still for a moment, staring at it, unsure of what exactly he was holding. His mind didn't quite know how to make sense of it. Was it some secret Nazi weapon? A twisted relic of a bygone era, just like the scientist who'd built it? Maybe, but that didn't matter either. He could already hear the conversations back at base. Where did you get that? How much did it cost? It was a rare find. War memorabilia, a piece of history. He slipped it into his pack, hiding it among the other seized items. No one had to know about it. They wouldn't understand. But he would. The young soldier left the room, keeping the weapon hidden under his gear, his face grinning like a kid who'd just snatched something precious from the mess of war. And as he walked out of the basement, his thoughts were already racing ahead, imagining the stories he'd tell about this particular find. but he never got the chance to tell those stories. As the soldiers made their way back to base camp, guerrilla fighters ambushed them. The attack came without warning. Gunfire erupted from all sides, tearing through the jungle like a storm. The trees cracked and splintered under the weight of the bullets, and the screams of his comrades filled the air. The soldier's heart pounded in his chest, the chaos pushing him deeper into the mess. He scrambled for cover, throwing himself behind a thick tree trunk, the bark splintering under the hail of gunfire. He reached for his weapon, but it wasn't there. His eyes darted around, the sound of bullets whizzing past his head, until he saw it, lying on the ground where he dropped it in the scramble. Then, he remembered his keepsake. He pulled the strange weapon from his pack, the weight of it odd in his hands. It wasn't like any weapon he had ever used, but the more he looked at it, the more curious he became. It seemed to hum, almost alive.
Cover me!
His comrade yelled from behind a tree, firing his rifle at an unseen enemy. The soldier nodded, adrenaline pushing him forward, heart racing. He pressed the barrel of the MP5K against the trunk, aiming at the enemy fighters who were scattered in the underbrush ahead. The sound of the jungle was deafening. The screams of combatants, the roar of distant explosions, the high-pitched crack of rifle shots cutting through the humid air. He steadied his breath, sighted in on the figure moving through the trees, and squeezed the trigger. The weapon groaned, a sound that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Then, with a sickening feeling in his gut, he watched teeth shoot out, flying in a wide arc. He blinked. Teeth. They flew like jagged shrapnel, more akin to dental debris than bullets. The soldier watched in horror as the teeth struck the tree ahead of him with a dull clink, leaving only tiny gashes in the bark. He swore under his breath and pulled the trigger again. The teeth hit the ground in front of the gorillas. It wasn't enough. No force, no punch.
What is this?
He muttered to himself, his voice barely audible above the battle. He didn't have time to rethink it. Another gorilla fired at his position, forcing him to duck. The teeth weren't working the way a bullet should, but it didn't matter. He had to keep firing. It was all he had. He squeezed the trigger again and again. Teeth. More teeth. The gorillas, taking advantage of the ineffective fire, began charging forward. They moved in clusters, using the thick vegetation as cover. He needed to hold them off, and fast.
Reload!
Someone shouted. The soldier was too slow to reload with regular ammo. There was no time. His heart raced as he pressed the trigger again, each tooth flying with a sickening clatter. Ineffective. Useless. But it worked for now. It kept the gorillas at bay, if only for a moment. The chaos of battle raged on. Explosions rocked the ground around him, sending dust and dirt into the air. He saw his comrade go down, his body crashing to the ground with a sickening thud. Another man fell beside him, his weapon knocked out of reach.
Get up! Get up!
The soldier screamed to his fallen comrades, not even sure if they could hear him. He took a breath, re-aimed, and pulled the trigger again. More teeth. This time, they struck. The gorilla he'd aimed at staggered back, but only from the shock. The teeth weren't lethal. They barely even hurt. The soldier watched as the gorilla raised his weapon, determined to fight back. But it was enough to buy the soldier some time. Just. He crouched lower, glancing at the weapon in his hands, and realized he was out of ammunition. Frantically, he opened the chamber, hoping, praying to find more. He grabbed the pouch of standard ammunition from his belt and tried to reload. The weapon didn't budge. It wouldn't accept the normal bullets. He tried again, slamming the magazine in harder, but the chamber refused to close. He was panicking. He looked back up to the battle. His comrades needed him, and all he had was this ridiculous weapon that shot teeth. The guerrilla forces were closing in. He could see them rushing forward, weapons raised.
Come on!
He yelled, struggling with the weapon. The heat of the battle was making everything feel like a blur. His breath ragged, sweat stinging his eyes, the world around him spinning. Just as he prepared to throw the weapon aside in frustration, he saw something strange. One of the teeth dropped from the chamber, and he froze. It rolled out, just like it had before. He stared at it, confused, realizing something he had missed. The weapon wasn't out of ammunition. It wasn't broken. It was waiting for its own regenerative ammunition. Before he could process this, another shot rang out from the trees, and the world went dark. The battle raged on around his crumpled body. Eventually, the guerrilla forces triumphed. The soldier's weapon, the strange weapon with the teeth, was left behind on the battlefield, unnoticed for just a moment. But one of the guerrilla fighters, eyes wild from the ferocity of the battle, spotted it. He crouched low, his fingers brushing over the cool metal of the weapon. He had seen it before, in the hands of the young soldier. Now it was his. He picked it up, feeling the strange weight of it in his hands. It was different, nothing like the rifles they used, nothing like the weapons they knew, but it was a weapon nonetheless, and it was valuable. He glanced down at the soldier's dog tag, still hanging from the man's neck, blood staining the metal. Without a second thought, he pulled it free, tucking it into his pouch as a reminder, a trophy, a victory, no matter how small. The weapon was his now, a souvenir from the battle that had been won. The guerrilla fighter moved through the jungle, the weapon slung over his shoulder, feeling its unfamiliar weight as he trekked back to his small, hidden village. He had seen the aftermath of the battle, the destruction and the dead. The victory had come at a cost, but nothing could prepare him for what awaited him when he reached his home. As he stepped through the trees, he saw the smoke rising in the distance. His heart sank. His stomach twisted. The air, thick with the smell of gunpowder and blood, burned his nostrils as he moved closer. When he reached the village, it was gone. His heart skipped a beat as his eyes fell on the bodies lying in the dirt. The military had come for them, just as they always did. They had taken everything: his family, his home, the children who had played in the fields, the elders who had whispered stories of resistance. His mother, his brother, his wife. Gone. Grief, pure and sharp, flooded his chest. He dropped to his knees, the weight of loss crushing him. It was his fault. He had led the attack. He had brought the battle to their doorstep. More soldiers were out there. They would pay for this. With trembling hands, he reached for his trophy weapon still hanging off his shoulder. He gripped the weapon tightly, the cold metal offering him a fleeting sense of control, of power. With anger coursing through him, he aimed the weapon at the undergrowth. With a guttural, agonizing scream, he pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. The chamber was empty. Confused, he tried to reload it. Why wasn't it working? He twisted, turned, pulled at the magazine, but it refused to budge. In his frustration, he didn't notice the strange sensation at first, but then, as he looked closer, something was changing. The chamber of the weapon was wet, and in the place where the bullets should have been, there were teeth. He stared at the jagged teeth as they formed. It was madness. It was absurd. But it didn't matter anymore. The gravity of the situation hit him. He lowered the weapon, his hands falling to his sides. There was no fight left in him. The world had taken everything. The weapon, the teeth, the pain. It all felt like a cruel joke. And all he could do was stand there, numb, as the groaning weapon in his hands continued to grow its deadly supply of ammunition. There was no reason to stay anymore. The war had taken everything from him. The guerrilla fighter left the village, his heart as empty as the place he had once called home. The weapon was still with him, slung over his back like a cursed prize, a cruel reminder of the violence he had chosen to live by. He made his way out of the jungle, through the streets that had once been alive with the sounds of resistance, and now stood as silent witnesses to the destruction. There was nothing left for him in Argentina, nothing but ghosts. So he left. He packed what little he could, slipping out of the country, away from the conflict that had claimed so much. He headed north, to a place that promised peace, to the United States, a country he had heard of, but never seen. Maybe there, he thought, he could start over. The guerrilla fighter arrived in the United States with little more than the clothes on his back and the weapon still slung over his shoulder. The world was different here, strange and unfamiliar, but for him, it was just another place where he could hide. He wasn't running toward anything. He was running away from the war, from the faces of the dead, from the screams of his family. And maybe, he thought, he could leave the past behind. Maybe this new land would forget him, just as he hoped to forget the horrors he had witnessed. The guerrilla fighter found a small, quiet town tucked away in a forgotten corner of the world. He rented a small room in a dingy apartment complex, barely enough space for him and his thoughts, let alone the memories. He kept to himself, avoided the neighbors, and never spoke. The days bled into each other. He tried to forget the faces, the blood, the heat of the jungle, the stench of death, but it was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. Solitude became his only companion. His trophy weapon, with its teeth, remained by his side, like a sick, twisted reminder of everything that had been lost. He kept it hidden mostly, but it was always there, always waiting. As the years passed, the guerrilla fighters' paranoia deepened. The world, once a place of revolution and war, now felt like a ticking clock. Time was running out. The man became obsessed with the idea of survival. It wasn't enough to just live. He had to be ready for what came next. The doomsday prepper mentality took hold. He stocked up on everything: cans of food, water, bottles of medicine, and weapons. His small room became a fortress of supplies, stacked high with boxes and crates, like a madman preparing for an apocalypse. He hoarded weapons, a mix of everything he could find: old rifles, handguns, knives, tools, anything that could help him survive when the world came crashing down. He believed it would happen one day. The chaos would come back. He had seen it. He had lived it. He had felt it in his bones, and he would be ready. Every day, he would check his stockpiles, tighten security around his barricaded windows, and watch the news. Everything out there seemed to confirm it. The world was falling apart. Riots in the streets, governments on the brink of collapse, the signs were all there. He had no family, no friends, only his supplies, his weapons, and the weapon with the teeth, a relic of a time he couldn't let go of. The years took their toll. His hair grayed, his skin sagged, his body grew frail, yet his mind remained as sharp as ever. But the weight of solitude wore on him. He refused to confront the trauma of his past. He refused to look at the teeth, to remember the faces of his comrades who had fallen, or the family he had lost in the flames of war. He could no longer tell the difference between the nightmares and his waking life. Every corner of his small, isolated existence was consumed by the fear of what would come next. The world outside passed by without him. The neighbors came and went, their voices and laughter filtering through the walls, but he stayed silent. He had no need for human contact. He was preparing for the worst. His heart raced in the middle of the night, even though the world around him slept peacefully. He checked the locks on his windows, the cans of food stacked high, the weapon with the teeth always close by. Time marched on, but for him, it was just one long, endless day. The future was coming, but he couldn't bear to face it. Fear was all that remained. And then, one day, it came. The end. His body, frail and aging, gave out. No one noticed his passing right away. The neighbors went about their lives, oblivious to the man who had kept to himself for so many years. Days passed before anyone bothered to check on him. He was found alone in his room, surrounded by his supplies and weapons, all of it meaningless in the end. And beside him, still in his cold, stiff hand, was the weapon with the teeth, still waiting. His strange, isolated existence had raised no alarms until the ATF and FBI were notified about the vast arsenal found in his home. When the authorities arrived, the scene was as eerie as it was unsettling. Boxes of food stacked high in the corners, weapons piled like a jumbled treasure trove, and papers scattered haphazardly across the floor. The officers worked through the hoard in silence, cataloging everything they could find, marking the weapons with official tags. It wasn't long before one of them came across something that made him stop in his tracks. Tucked between a rusted rifle and a box of ammo clips, he found the MP5K PDW, its strange, jagged chamber staring back at him. The teeth glinted in the dim light, human-like, unnervingly jagged, as though someone had intentionally jammed them into the chamber. The officer felt his gut twist, a sense of unease creeping into his chest. This was no ordinary firearm.
What is this thing?
He muttered under his breath, turning the weapon in his hands, unsure whether to be intrigued or horrified. He called over his partner. They examined it together, but neither of them could understand what they were looking at. No one in the department had encountered anything like it. Word got out about the strange weapon soon after, and it didn't take long before the SCP Foundation was alerted. The agents arrived with little fanfare, as they always did, their presence barely noticed amid the ongoing investigation. They moved quickly, their trained eyes scanning the collection for anything that stood out, and when they came across the MP5K PDW with the teeth, they knew they had found something significant. Their training had taught them to spot anomalies like this. The weapon wasn't just unusual, It was anomalous. At first glance, SCP-127 appears to be a standard MP5K PDW submachine gun, which would be nothing out of the ordinary. However, upon further analysis, it has been revealed that aside from its steel and polymer exterior, the entirety of the firearm is organic and alive. This living nature is not immediately obvious, but its biological components are present in every functional part of the weapon. One of the most striking aspects of SCP-127 is its ammunition, which initially appeared to be human-like teeth. DNA testing of these bullets revealed that they do not match any known species on Earth. They are something entirely unique, bizarre in their shape, composition, and origins. SCP-127 features two distinct firing modes, semi-automatic and fully automatic, with an audible groan when switching between the two modes. The weapon's magazine typically holds 60 shots, and once depleted, it takes approximately 3 to 5 days for the ammunition to fully regenerate. Attempts to remove the magazine have been unsuccessful, as it appears to be permanently integrated into the weapon. While SCP-127 does not appear to have any reproductive organs, as determined by scans, it does require water, calcium, and protein to remain functional and sustain its biological components. It is unclear how or why these materials are necessary, but they seem essential for its continued operation. While it poses no more immediate danger than any regular firearm, its unusual properties require specific containment measures. It is to be stored in Weapons Locker 7C when not in use, and kept suspended in a solution rich in calcium and protein to sustain its organic components. Only the research team assigned to SCP-127 is authorized to access it, and all interactions with the anomaly must be carefully monitored.
The Walking Dead, dripping and rotting, with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. A huge black wolf stalking through the woods as you walk home alone in the dead of night. Even the horrors of the SCP Foundation, the old man, SCP-106, the gray shrieking nightmare of SCP-096, and the relentless hatred and violence of SCP-682. All these things frighten people, even the staff of the SCP Foundation, but one question still haunts them. One terrible, awful question. What's in the attic? What's in the attic? What is in the attic? There's a certain time of night where it seems as if day will never come, where the shadows have stretched long and heavy across the floor, and the air is thick with a sense of shapeless dread. Past midnight, but far before the relief of dawn, it is the time of night when terrors come to life, where fear sits on your chest and refuses to let you breathe easily. Right now, it is that time of night in the Lee family home. And with a knife under her pillow and disaster on her mind, Olivia Lee cannot sleep. She holds her breath, listening to the sounds of the house around her. Her siblings were asleep in their respective rooms, snoring away in the kind of peaceful slumber she could barely remember. Her parents whispering together downstairs. She can't make it out exactly, but she has a theory. They're talking about her, most likely. What else could they be discussing? After so many years of seemingly endless fighting, shouting, slamming doors, a porcelain vase or expensive china plate smashed against a wall, she can feel the tension reaching a boiling point. No doubt her parents are plotting, discussing what to do about her. They could kick her out, but she's only 17. No, she has the sneaking suspicion they have something else planned, something more drastic. That's why she snatched one of the kitchen knives yesterday, just in case. She can feel it under her pillow now, its presence radiating through the cool pillowcase against her cheek. Things have never been quite right in this house, in this family. Since she was little, she could feel an aura of wrongness clinging to everyone, to everything. It's only gotten worse over the years, condensing into a fog that chokes her when she tries to act like everything is normal. Like they're a perfect, happy family. Her parents might be content to keep up the charade, but she won't. Not anymore. She's been preparing, packing a duffel bag of clothes, food, a little bit of money, everything she needs to get out of this house, out of this town, once and for all. If they try anything tonight, that will be the sign that she needs to cut and run. Olivia's thoughts are interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside of her room. 2 sets of adult footsteps, not her siblings coming to complain of a bad dream. Her parents. She holds her breath, waiting for the footsteps to pass, but they stop just in front of her door. The knob begins to turn.
and she curses herself for not locking it. This is it. Whatever force in this house has made them resent her all this time, it has driven them to act. As the door creaks open, Olivia snatches the knife out from under her pillow, brandishing it in front of her. Her parents look more angry than surprised, as if they were expecting this from her. They shout at her to put the knife down and listen to what they say. Olivia refuses. It's the only leverage she has in this 2-on-1 confrontation, and she isn't about to give it up. She snatches the bag out from under her bed, and she slowly backs her parents up against the wall. This close, she can see the desperation in her mother's eyes and smell the spirits on her father's breath. Her hand trembles, and her eyes fill with tears. Suddenly, there's a sound from above, something heavy, shifting and moving across the floor. The sound makes Olivia's blood run cold. Up there, that's the attic. There's nothing in the attic, or at least as far as she knows. She's never been up there, could never force herself to climb the ladder up into the darkness without every fiber of her being rejecting it, every primal instinct screaming at her to get away. For as long as she can remember, the attic has been a place she never wanted to go. There's the sound again, louder this time, more insistent. It turns her stomach, a chill running down her spine. Whatever's up there, she needs to get as far away from it, from this house, as possible. She drops the knife, letting it clatter to the floor, and she tears out of the room with her duffel bag. She can hear her parents behind her, calling her name, begging her to listen, threatening her if she doesn't, but she shuts out the noise. The only thing on her mind is getting out of this house. As she runs, she can hear that sound in the attic following her, somehow right above her, no matter what part of the house she's in. She doesn't even bother to put on her shoes, flinging open the front door and sprinting out into the night in her socks. The door slams behind her, and suddenly, Olivia is gone, disappearing into an open world where she can breathe again. Back inside the house, the family she left behind is still taking in the reality of her absence. Above them, in the attic, something shifts. After Olivia leaves, the mood in the house begins to shift as well. Her parents, Franklin and Yvette, had hoped that her absence would make their home seem lighter, but in fact, it's been the opposite. They used to be able to ignore the attic, to glance at it and feel the gnawing sensation that something important, something terrible, was waiting up there, then keep walking and move on with the rest of their day. But now, without their eldest daughter, the thorn in their side who constantly aggravated and disappointed them, the feeling is getting harder to ignore. Slowly but surely, thoughts of the attic worm their way under the couple's skin until there's little else that they can think about. The house has taken on an eerie silence. It doesn't sound like this in a house where a family of 5, formerly 6, but now 5, live. It sounds like a grave. Franklin cracks first, gives way to the pressure to climb the ladder and see what's up there in the attic. One morning he wakes up, drinks his coffee, then summons all of his strength, grits his teeth, and starts to climb. He grabs the first rung and begins to pull himself up. One step, one rung, then another, slowly making his way up into the shadowy unknown above. He reaches up with an unsteady hand and pushes the door open. Just as his head crosses the threshold of the opening into the attic, everything goes dark. Franklin suddenly opens his eyes and finds himself sitting back at the kitchen table, his wife across from him, his children playing in the next room while the sound of Saturday morning cartoons blares from the television. He blinks, rubbing at his eyes. Was it his imagination? Did he just have a vivid daydream about climbing up to the attic? He asks Yvette, and she swears that she never saw him get up from the table. He drank his coffee, looked lost in thought for a moment, and then he snapped back to attention. She didn't see him do anything else. She shrugs it off and turns back to the newspaper. Franklin can't shake it off that easily. He goes about the rest of his Saturday as normal, helping tidy up the house, playing in the yard with the kids, and staring off into space. But all the while, he's thinking of the attic. He could swear that he climbed that ladder, and would happily swear it in front of a judge. But it didn't make sense. None of it made sense. He decides to try again, or maybe for the first time. His head aches from the effort of trying to sift through his memories and find what he could be missing. Later that night, after he and his wife settle down for bed, Franklin sneaks out of the bedroom. He tiptoes through the hall until he reaches the ladder up to the attic. Looking at it in the dark, he feels a sense of foreboding, as if his subconscious is warning him to turn back. He fights through the feeling, climbing up the steps one by one. He pushes open the door, climbs up through, and then
He opens his eyes, lying on his back in bed, his wife fast asleep beside him. What the hell? Did he fall asleep and dream it? But why would he dream the same dream twice, once at the kitchen table in the bright light of the morning? No, that can't be it. Still, he needs to check one more time, just to be certain. He trudges out into the hall, climbs back up the ladder, and opens the attic door. Once more, he opens his eyes in bed, as if it was all a dream. But he knows better. Somehow the attic won't let him look inside. Whatever's up there, it doesn't want to be seen. He tries to put it out of his mind, to close his eyes and drift off to sleep. But he can't stop imagining the climb up to the attic. Can't stop trying to picture what could be hiding above his head. This is his house, damn it. He should know everything going on in here. It just doesn't make sense. Franklin doesn't sleep at all that night. He just lies there, eyes shut, mind replaying the memory of his failed climbs over and over on a loop. The next day he tries one more time, only to find himself sitting in his easy chair and watching the television. He tries again throughout the day, every time unable to reach the attic. Yvette notices the change in her husband, but doesn't dare ask what caused it. Whatever it is, he's growing increasingly distressed, angry, and terrified. She can guess what it might be about, and can feel that same uneasy feeling whenever she walks past the attic. The question of it gnaws at her, but she's afraid to try and look for herself. She can see what it's doing to Franklin and imagines what it might do to her. As the week goes on, Franklin and Yvette try their best to ignore the attic, but it grows more difficult with each passing day. By Sunday, Franklin comes home from the office with a box of his things, announcing that he has quit his job. He wants the family to move away from the house and have a fresh start somewhere else. He has a meeting with a realtor tomorrow to discuss selling the house. Yvette starts to protest, but thinks better of it. Best to let Franklin have his way when he gets his mind set on something. Besides, if they can move out of the house, maybe she won't ever have to find out what the trouble with the attic is all about. The next morning, a realtor comes by to meet with the Lees. He has great news. Someone has already put an offer on the house, and it's way more than what they paid for it. For once, things are really starting to look up for the family. They sit on the couch with the realtor, review the contract, and prepare to sign the paperwork. Franklin picks up a pen and gets ready to sign on the dotted line, but the instant the pen touches the paper, he's at the kitchen table again. Yvette sitting across from him with a cup of coffee in her hand. She stares at him, wide-eyed. She didn't forget this time. They both remember being there, ready to sign away their house and start a new chapter of their lives, when all of a sudden, like the skipping of a scratched record, there was a blip of some kind, and they were back here. Franklin rushes to the phone, dialing the realtor's number in an attempt to get a handle on things. It rings once, then an error message plays, informing him that the number he is trying to reach has been disconnected. He looks up the realtor, but finds that the real estate agency he was with is no longer in business. Somehow everything has changed, and their lucky break has vanished into thin air. Franklin throws his coffee cup across the room in a burst of rage, and it shatters against the wall in a flurry of hot coffee and ceramic. The kids stop playing in the other room, coming to check out the source of the loud sound. Yvette shoos them away, then quietly begins to clean up the mess, and they carry on that way until bedtime. Franklin goes to bed early, exhausted from seething all day about the lost opportunity to sell the house. Yvette stays up, reading a book on the couch while the rest of the family sleeps. Just as she goes to turn the next page, she hears something. A voice coming from upstairs. It isn't Franklin, it isn't one of the kids. It's a voice she hasn't heard in a little while. It sounds like Olivia. Yvette can't quite make out what her daughter is saying, but she knows that it's her. She's certain of it, just as certain as she is of the fact that the sound is coming from the attic. She's been avoiding it all this time, afraid to become haunted by whatever has been vexing Franklin, but she can't resist it anymore. She may have run her out of the house, but Olivia is her daughter, and her mother's instincts can only be suppressed for so long. Slowly but surely, she walks to the attic and begins to climb up. Hearing the noise, the children leave their rooms to come and see what's happening. "Mom, what are you doing?" one of them asks, but Yvette does not answer. All she can hear is Olivia in the attic. She still can't quite make out the words, but if she can just get up there, get inside, she knows that everything will become clear. She pushes open the door and climbs up into the inky blackness above. Back below, the children stare at the ladder, listening to the sound of hushed whispers. It goes on for several minutes before Yvette climbs back down into view. "What was up there?" one of the children asks. Yvette turns to look at them, her face pale, her eyes hollow. She shakes her head, silent for a long moment. When she speaks, her voice trembles with a mixture of confusion and horror.
I don't know. It wasn't Olivia.
As days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and months turn into years, the Lee family tries everything they can think of to make life with the attic bearable. They try to ignore it, but that doesn't work anymore. They attempt to have the house demolished, torn down so they can build something new on top of the rubble. But after they sign the papers, they wake up in bed and find that the construction company no longer exists. Franklin tries to investigate the attic again, but it just won't let him inside. If he ever makes it all the way up there, he isn't able to remember it. One day, in a fit of desperation, he takes out an ad in the newspaper asking for help from someone experienced in the unexplainable. He doesn't expect much to come of it, but the ad draws the attention of a secretive organization. A group of men come to the door to speak with the Lee family, identifying themselves as members of an organization they will only refer to as the Foundation. The men from the Foundation attempt to climb into the attic, only to find themselves standing at the front door again. They begin scribbling down notes after this occurrence, whispering to each other and saying words like cognitohazard and reality altering. The Lees don't understand much of it, but they can tell that it's nothing good. The men from the Foundation block off the house with caution tape, put up a notice of a highly dangerous gas leak, and then ask the Lees to come with them. Over the next few days, Dr. Dorset of the SCP Foundation conducts interviews with Yvette and Franklin regarding the nature of the attic and their experiences with it. He also speaks with the children that still live with them, as well as several of their neighbors. Following these interviews, the Foundation attempts several more manned explorations of the attic, as well as a few unmanned explorations. However, these attempts prove unsuccessful. In the days following these attempts, the Foundation discovers that all records of them have disappeared, and that the investigation attempts appear to have never actually taken place. The research team is desperate to put the puzzle together, and realizes they're still missing one piece: the runaway daughter, Olivia. The Foundation tracks her down, living under a new name and working as a landscaping contractor, and brings her in for questioning. She is surprisingly cooperative, almost unfazed by the bizarre situation. Dr. Garrett is selected to conduct the interview, and he meets Olivia, now Rebecca Feldman, in an interrogation room. He begins the interview saying, "Miss Feldman, what I want to discuss with you is a phenomenon associated with your parents' home, likely located in the upstairs..." She cuts him off. "The attic, I know. I thought somebody would come after me about that. I just didn't think it would be so soon." Dr. Garrett is surprised at her cavalier attitude toward the attic. He asks if she's aware of the phenomenon occurring in the house. She nods and says, "I left my parents when I was a kid, Dr. Garrett. We'd always fought. They weren't happy with the choices I had made, the things I believed in, the people I spent time with. There was anger there. So much anger I thought it might suffocate me. When I left, I felt like I could breathe again. I never went back after that, but sometimes I can still feel it. You know how you feel when you're dreaming and you're trying to run from something, but you can't see it, and you don't know if it's really there, but you run anyway? That's how it feels." He asks her what prompted her to leave her parents. Rebecca looks down at her hands, folded on the table, before she speaks again. "There was one night. We had a fight, and my dad was drinking, and Mom was even worse off at that point, and I kept a knife under my pillow for a long time in case something happened. And they came into my room that night. I don't know what their intentions were, but I drew it and backed them into the wall. The whole thing felt like I was being choked. And that was the first time I heard it. Something moving above me. I dropped the knife and ran, and I didn't look back." Dr. Garrett only had one more question for her: whether she knows about anything in the attic. She looked up from her hands then, meeting Garrett's eyes. "There are always secrets, Doctor. There's only so much hate that can build up in a place before it starts hating you back. I don't know what's in the attic, or if there's anything up there at all. I don't think I want to." With that, she stands up and leaves the room. The Foundation plans to detain her and investigate her story further to try and get to the heart of the truth, but the next day, they can't find her. As more days pass and they are unable to track her down, they come to a disquieting conclusion. According to all available information and legal documentation, Olivia Lee does not exist. Dr. Garrett insists that he spoke with her and continues to review the transcript of their conversation. She remains clear as day in his memories and in the minds of her family, but in reality, or whatever the entity in the attic molded this reality into, she never existed at all. These winters are getting worse every year, that's for sure. The old cattle rancher doesn't know if it's the climate changing, God's judgment arriving, or if he's just getting older and struggling to keep up. Probably a strong mix of all of it. Whatever the cause, it doesn't change the facts. It's deathly cold out there. His ailing, elderly ma's health continues to deteriorate. He hasn't heard from his delivery driver Jorge in days, and on top of it all, his loyal dog Maribel is out there barking into the darkness of the barn. The rancher heads out to fetch her. He doesn't know what he'd do if she froze. He whistles, but she doesn't look back at him. She just carries on barking up that road into the snowy night. The rancher wades through the snow and peers in the direction she's looking.
There's nothing there, girl. Get inside.
But Maribel keeps barking. She's insisting. He looks again. Is that? The rancher takes off running up the road. All thoughts of cold immediately gone from his mind, he races towards the figure as fast as he can. His frozen fingers fumble at the zipper on his parka. Icy wind stabs the insides of his lungs. Maribel shoots off ahead of him. There, he pulls the zipper down and wrestles the thick coat off of his shoulders just as he reaches the tiny figure. He drops to his knees and throws the coat over the shoulders of the little girl standing alone in the snow. Quick as he can, he wraps it tightly around her, pulling the hood up and over her head. He takes her tiny shoulders in his hands and gives her a shake.
You okay? Hello? Can you hear me?
The girl sways for a moment, then collapses. He catches her and in one deft motion scoops her into his arms and takes off back down the road in the direction of his farm. Where the hell had she come from? There are no buildings around here for miles. No one uses that road except Jorge. And in this weather, she couldn't have walked all the way over those mountains. She'd have frozen solid. He bites the finger of a glove and pulls it off. With his bare hand, he clasps one of hers. By the feel of her skin, she pretty much is frozen solid already. He needs to get her warmed up, now. He kicks open the front door and bundles inside with a flurry of snowflakes and an anxious dog at his heels. The fire's not quite dead yet, so he rushes over to the hearth and lays the little girl down next to it. He can barely see her at all wrapped up in his enormous coat. She doesn't seem to be moving.
Ma, I'm home. I found someone.
The rancher grabs 2 dry logs from the side and throws them onto the fire. He piles kindling high on top of them and blows steadily into the embers at the bottom. They glow and swell in size. No taking yet. He blows again for longer, and again. He feels his head starting to swim. A crackle, a lick of flame. It's taken. Panting, he turns back to the bundled-up coat on the floor with the child inside. Still no movement. A sickening knot tightens his stomach. What if she's... No, don't let yourself think that. Not yet. He reaches down and gently undoes the zipper on the parka. His trembling fingers push back the hood. She's pale, deathly pale. Her dark brown hair is wet and clings to her scalp. The tips are frozen. At a guess, she must only be 9 years old. Eyes closed, lips a sickening blue. But that's not the color that scares him the most. On her neck, there's red. Delicately as he can, the rancher takes the coat off her shoulders and hangs it up by the fire. She's dressed only in a plaid shirt, way too big for her. It looks like an adult's shirt, similar to an old one he used to have years ago. But on her neck, her hands, her feet, is that same deep red, layers of blood frozen to her skin. He sits back, his mind blank. He's seen that much blood before. Sure he has. When you work with cattle, it's an unfortunate part of the job. He's seen cows bleed out during childbirth. The girl in front of him, she's the same color as those orphaned calves that lie crying on the floor. A groaning sound fills the room. The rancher looks across at the armchair where his ma sits. She doesn't look at him, doesn't look at the girl on the floor. She just stares into the fire, same way she always does. Ma groans again, trying to express something she doesn't understand, being in a world without living in it.
Ma, it's okay. Sorry if I startled you. We have a guest with us.
But she just keeps on groaning and staring into the fire. The rancher buries his head in his hands and lets out a deep breath. Only the sound of his breath is joined by another, a tiny breath rattling and rasping through a damaged child's throat, trying its best to keep its host alive. The rancher opens his eyes and stares at the child.
She isn't conscious, not by a long shot, but she's breathing, a little at a time. The icicles in her hair have turned into rounded droplets of water that glow by the heat of the fire. He snaps back to his senses. He's not doing her much if she's just lying there soaking wet. He runs off upstairs and grabs some towels and a fresh flannel shirt to wear. After several minutes of drying her off, he's confident enough that he's got most of the water off. There's still a lot of blood caked to her skin, but as far as he can tell, there's no wound anywhere that it could have come from. Brow furrowed, he leaves her under a bundle of blankets and fills up the kettle with water. Hanging it carefully over the fire, he walks over to the cabinet and fishes out a tin of cocoa from the top shelf. Hasn't been used in years, but should still be fine. He would make it with milk, but she's probably dehydrated. Lifting the kettle's lid with the poker, the rancher pours the brown powder inside and waits for it to boil. The little girl's eyes are open now. She's staring into the flames. Her lips are looking a little more pink, her skin a little more blotchy.
You're safe here. Just stay by the fire and warm up a bit. You like cocoa?
The little girl drags her eyes away from the flames. Her expression is mostly blank. She looks too tired to be confused. I don't know.
I think you will. Ma always gave me cocoa.
Okay. And with that, the farmhouse falls silent. The little girl stares into the fire. The rancher watches her, finally feeling the wave of exhaustion crashing over him. His ma has fallen asleep in her armchair. Only Maribel stays awake through the whole night, staying close to the little girl by the fire, occasionally licking her toes to try and warm them up. By the morning, the snow stopped, but the huge drifts remain. As the rancher walks across to the barn, he finds it hard to believe that just a few hours ago, the winds were whipping at his face as hard as they were. The world this morning is totally still. What the rancher finds even harder to believe is that there's a little girl in his house right now, fast asleep by the fire. He checked her forehead when he woke up this morning, and she miraculously hadn't caught a fever. She couldn't have been out in that weather for too long, but it only made the question more mysterious. Where did she come from? Maribel didn't get up this morning. From all of the excitement last night, she must have been too tired for today. Walking through the crisp morning air, he can't really blame her. He shoulders the barn door open. A column of steam curls out of the opening. All of that warmth, humidity, and cattle smell is strangely comforting this morning. But as the rancher goes around checking on all the cows inside, he very quickly discovers a problem. They're thin. Way too thin. Some of them look to be on the verge of starvation. He'd missed it last night as he drove them down in the dark, but in the warm glow of the barn's lights, it's unmistakable. These cows haven't been eating properly. He pours out several sacks of grain for them into the troughs, and they all gather around hungrily, filling both their stomachs as fast as they can. The rancher leans on the railing for a moment, confused. Even in this cold, there was still plenty of green grass for them up on the ridge. That's why he'd taken them up there. They should have had no trouble eating until the snow came in last night. He doesn't like this one bit. Last time Jorge had driven down and collected some of the meat, he'd had a few questions about the quantity being smaller than usual. Were the cows sick at all? Not that the rancher could tell. But now, looking at them, it's clear as day. Something's up.
You hungry?
The little girl nods. They sit across the table from one another, eating homemade bread and soup. Ma stays over by the fire. Maribel slowly wanders over to the kitchenette and flops down on the floor, exhausted.
Where are you from?
The girl shrugs her shoulders.
You know how you got out here? Remember anything from last night?
The little girl just eats her soup and shakes her head. She doesn't look particularly scared or worried, just a little confused.
Where are your parents? Do you have parents?
Again, the little girl shrugs. The rancher sits back and folds his arms. He's tried to call into town, but his phone line's gone out in the blizzard. Not much to be done until the snow clears. He's got a good relationship with the police around here. If he explains the situation, then it'll all be okay.
What do you know? Can you remember anything from last night?
It was dark. The girl slurps her soup. I was hungry. So hungry. Then I saw the light and I went towards that.
My car?
No. Well, yes, later on it was your car, but before it wasn't.
What was the light then? Where were you?
I don't know. It was just the light. Now he's even more confused. But try as he might, the rancher can't figure any of it out. And try as she might, the little girl can't remember anything more precise than that. The pair of them hop into the car and drive back out up the road that afternoon. The snow is piled so high that the rancher is having to get out twice as often as he did the previous night to clear a track for them. He isn't actually sure what he's brought her out here looking for. Clues, maybe? He almost laughs at himself at the thought, but that's probably the best word for it. If he can figure out how she got here, then he can work on understanding who she is and how to get her home. There's the damage to the phone line. One of the masts has collapsed, sagging heavily on the lines. That's not something he can fix on his own. No, sir. Looks like he'll have to wait for the snow to melt before making any phone calls again. That could be in 1 week. That could be in 3 months. He glances at the child sitting in the passenger seat. She's just staring out of the window in amazement, wrapped up in as many layers as he could put on her. They may be stuck together for a while. A lurch. The pickup plunges dangerously to the left. The rancher slams on the brakes and it comes to a stop just in time. A large chunk of snow in front of them comes loose and slips off the side of the road. It tumbles down into a gully that he hadn't even spotted. With all this snow on the ground, he has no frame of reference. Everything is just white. Stay here. The rancher opens the door and climbs out. He wishes Maribel was with him, but she'd wanted to stay home again. Poor dog. She must really be going through it if she wasn't even up for a ride in the pickup. Carefully as he can, testing every step before making it, the rancher creeps over to the edge of the gully. It's bigger than he thought, much bigger. It continues down, more and more sharply for a few hundred feet, all the way down into a... Oh no. There's a semi down there, a big rig, warped and bent, lying on the rocks. Just a glance is enough to tell the rancher it's Jorge's, but he just keeps staring at it in disbelief. Can't be. But it is. Stay in the car. The rancher reaches past the little girl and into the back seat. Grabbing a pair of crampons and some rope, he straightens up and looks at the girl. She knows it's serious. He can see the concern on her face. Stay in the car, he repeats. By the time the rancher makes it down to the truck, his legs and back are killing him. All this work over the last 24 hours is going to start taking its toll sooner or later, but some things have to be done. He pauses by the semi. It's on its side. He'll have to climb up onto it and try to open the door. Some things have to be done. He hoists himself up and manages to clamber onto the metal door. It's badly crumpled, and the window is smashed in. He doesn't fancy his chances of being able to get it open. One look through the window shows him that he won't want to do that anyway. Blood coats every inch of the inside of Jorge's truck. The cabin that the rancher is so used to seeing and sitting in is almost unrecognizable. Smashed glass is sprinkled across every surface with a dark brownish-red layer of gore frozen into everything else. There, in the midst of it all, still wearing a seatbelt, is Jorge's body. It dangles like a limp carcass at a butcher shop, like the cows he hangs in the slaughterhouse. And like those cows, a large chunk of Jorge is missing. His fat stomach is gone, not just cut open, but gone. The tops of his thighs, too, and much of his chest. So much of him is just missing. Open arteries and lifeless nerves dangle in place. That must have been a hell of a crash. The rancher reaches over and pulls Jorge's cap down over his eyes. Not much else to be done right now. No way he can clean this mess up by himself. But as the rancher climbs up the valley, his mind starts to connect some dots that leave a sick feeling in his stomach. He's seen that much blood somewhere else, or rather, on someone else, just last night. He slams the door to the pickup shut and starts to drive back down the track. Since the snow stopped, all of the drifts that he'd cleared earlier remain clear. It's only a few minutes' drive back down to the farm. He doesn't say a word the whole way, and neither does the little girl. She clearly senses something's up. The sick feeling in his stomach remains. He pulls up the handbrake, and the two of them sit in silence outside the farmhouse. There's a truck in that valley. Did you know that? Yes. Is that where you came from last night? I don't remember. Was he... The rancher stops. Jorge didn't have any kids. What were you doing in his truck? I don't know. Was he... The rancher can't bring himself to accuse his best friend of the words that almost left his mouth. Do you think you might not remember because something bad happened to you? I don't know. The rancher closes his eyes for a long moment. Silence fills the pickup. Come on, let's get inside. But inside wasn't the safe haven he'd been hoping for. Ma's been throwing up. Not just once, but a few times. She's distressed, groaning aimlessly for someone to come and save her. Maribel is pacing around the room, yelping and whining. The rancher immediately goes upstairs to get some rags to clean up with. Perfect timing, as usual. But he stops in his tracks when he comes back down. His ma's stopped moaning. The little girl is kneeling by the armchair, holding the old lady's hand. The room is calm. The little girl gently places the frail hand back on the armrest and comes over to take the rags from the rancher. Returning to the old lady, the girl goes about mopping her up as best she can. Maribel slumps back down on the floor. And that is how the four of them exist for the next few days. Ma gets sicker steadily, but the little girl stays by her side all day long, caring for her in every way. The rancher's glad of that. It gives him the time he needs to help his cows outside. None of them are in a good shape. Whatever it is, they're still getting thinner. He feeds them all the grain they'd normally need, and then some, and they always finish it off. Yet none of them are getting any fatter. The rancher leans on the railing, trusty dog by his side. His energy is starting to really lag behind what he needs. The last couple of days, even though he hasn't done all that much, have totally taken it out of him.
What do you think it is, Maribel?
He looks down at his little friend. She's looking thinner too, actually, but she's been eating just fine. It hits him. Tapeworms. As soon as the word comes into his head, it makes total sense. His cows, his entire herd by the looks of things, have been riddled with tapeworms. Oh, hell. He hasn't got anywhere near the amount of medicine needed to give some to all of them. Even if he did, a lot of them are looking pretty far gone. The chance of reinfection would be high. He needs supplies. He needs Jorge. Maribel whines softly next to him. He knows what they have to do. Laying Maribel down carefully by the fire, the rancher administers the tapeworm medicine. For a few hours, they lie there together. He strokes her side, waiting for her to pass it. The little girl watches over his shoulder. His ma sits back in her chair, mumbling to herself. He hasn't talked to the little girl anymore about Jorge yet. He isn't sure what there is to say. Maybe he should ask if Jorge was sick. After all, the cows clearly have had these tapeworms since before the other night. Jorge may have picked up contaminated meat from him last time he came. Maybe. Maribel passes the worm on the rug. Ugh, the smell. The rancher uses the tongs next to the fire to pick the worm up. It's long and pale, and dead. He tosses it into the fire and puts the tongs in the flames for a bit to sterilize them. The worm sizzles and pops in the flames. The sound makes his stomach crawl. The rancher glances around and sees the little girl staring at the tapeworm. He looks past the girl to his ma sitting in the chair. Her turn next. But as that night and the following morning reveal, it's too late. His ma's groans turn into cries of pain. She openly sobs by the fire, clutching at her stomach. Every time the rancher tries to give her the medicine, she just vomits it back up. Each time she vomits, there's more and more blood mixed in. The little girl gets more and more upset. It's not fair on her to have to witness something this traumatic and disgusting. There's nowhere else for her to go. She shouldn't even be here at all. The fact that she is means she has to help. That's all there is to it. By sunrise, his ma has passed away. There is nasty red bruising all across her abdomen, which tells him she must have bled out internally from this worm. He'd been too late to realize what was wrong. Too late with the cows, and too late with his ma. He covers his ma with a blanket and tells the little girl not to go and wash her hands. He needs to check on the cattle. Sure enough, during the night, a handful of them died too. The calves. They were the ones to go first whenever something like this happened. Mother cows stood over their calves, licking their heads, willing them to wake up. The rancher drags each body out to the back and burns them. He can't risk any more contamination. As the carcasses burn, he allows himself to cry. But when the rancher comes back into the house, it's full of noise, a noise that takes his brain a long time to comprehend. Crying, but not his own, not the little girl either. No, it was a new sound. It was a baby, a newborn child screaming at the top of its lungs. The rancher can't believe what he's looking at. The little girl is sitting at the hearth with Maribel at her feet. In her arms, drenched in blood, is a baby. The girl looks up at him and smiles sweetly. "It's a boy." Then she turns around to his ma's body under the blanket. A sickening red patch soaks through the fabric, right over where her stomach would be.
What the hell happened here?
I've got a little brother.
Securing and containing SCP-1003 has proven challenging. This is largely because the tapeworm that causes all of this damage is virtually indistinguishable from Echinococcus granulosus, the common variety of tapeworm that causes hydatid disease. The tapeworm, designated SCP-1003-1, follows the same life cycle as other regular worms. Its eggs come into contact with an animal through contaminated meat, saliva, or unclean surfaces and are ingested. Once inside the gut, they grow and latch onto the inside of the digestive tract, where they feed on the nutrients of the food traveling past them, steadily growing bigger and stronger. Once mature, they lay eggs, which pass out in the animal's excrement to continue the process. Infections spread quickly, particularly in unsanitary conditions amongst livestock, and can often be difficult to contain, as by the time the symptoms, nausea, weight loss, fever, start to manifest in the infected, the worms have likely already reproduced and have a new generation growing in the guts of other animals. As far as the Foundation is aware, SCP-1003 follows this normal pattern in all observed animals except humans. When a human ingests an egg from this tapeworm, a very different creature starts to grow in their gut. Human embryos, with the same genetic code as the tapeworm, begin to form. The rate of their growth is greatly accelerated, however. By just 8 weeks, they are as mature as the typical 3-week-old neonate or newborn child, although similar in size to an 8-week-old embryo at 13 to 16 centimeters. Many eggs usually enter this fertilization period, but almost all of them die before having a chance to develop much beyond the early stages. They stand the best chance of survival when buried in the hepatic tissue, where they can absorb plenty of nutrients from their host. The host at this point usually starts to experience mild symptoms, lethargy, the occasional stomach cramp, nothing particularly severe. Yet, the embryos that survive soon develop rows of temporary, razor-sharp teeth. At this point, passively absorbing nutrients is no longer enough for them. They bury their teeth into the soft tissue surrounding them and begin to eat. Once they enter this stage, their rate of growth increases exponentially the more flesh they consume. Eventually burrowing out into the world, the tapeworm child is born drenched in blood. The size and apparent age of the child that emerges from the corpse are determined by the size of the person they consume. For example, the child eating its way out of the rancher's maw appeared to be only a 10-month-old child, as there was very little of the frail old woman for it to eat. By contrast, the little girl who emerged from Orhe's gut had plenty of fat to feast on, and so was able to grow to the size of a 9-year-old. Once the child emerges, the teeth that they'd used to eat their way out quickly become loose and are replaced by regular human teeth. The children themselves have no memory at all of where they've come from or what they are. They have the same motor and linguistic skills that a regular child would possess at their age. Nothing, aside from their DNA, marks them out as being any different from the children around them, blissfully ignorant, just like the children around them. It is theorized that many of these children end up in orphanages. With no birth certificates or identifiable parents, they fall through the gaps in the system, quickly lost to the world. The only way to really track them at all is to follow the infections they cause. You see, these tapeworm children have one final curse they must live with. Their bodily fluids, their saliva, and sweat contain the same tapeworm protoscolex that will develop into SCP-1003-1 as soon as it is ingested by another creature, making the cycle start all over again. If you want to track down a tapeworm child, and I highly advise that you don't, all you have to do is follow the trail of nasty stomach infections, internal bleeding, and freak pregnancies amongst the outcasts of society. It, unfortunately, will not take long. There are currently 10 instances of SCP-1003-2 in containment. The children live in Bioresearch Area 13 under strict supervision. Researchers are only permitted to enter their cells whilst wearing full-body biohazard suits, but first must have Level 4 security clearance and must have written permission, and can only enter with specific research goals agreed upon. All staff are regularly tested for the presence of any kind of tapeworms in their system. No other animals are permitted in this facility. If you want to support DrBob while also getting influence over the anomalies we cover and an exclusive look behind the scenes, check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry, such as SCP-2119, Transmitting Parasite, for more perilous parasites. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.